I am your host, Jason Miles, and this is Revolution Podcast. Thank you all for joining me for another episode. I don't remember if I said this on air. I'll be very candid. This episode was one of those huge favors. There was a show that we had scheduled on the calendar that we were all kind of looking forward to, and I totally forgot to confirm the guest. So last minute, Djene Bajalan and I are trying to scramble, and I hit up a friend of mine who just did Joe Rogan, my friend Ben Burgis. And I was like, why don't you come on the show? We'll talk about you going on Rogan, and is it worth it for figures on the left to go on these shows that are... I wouldn't call Joe Rogan a right-winger because I don't believe that he has a true ideology. I think he's a guy that for the last 20 plus years has done relatively well for himself, that hangs out in spheres of influence of other people that do really well for themselves. So there's a lot of libertarian ideology in that world. There's a lot of kind of self-help-ishness in that world where, that's where people like Jordan Peterson come through. So I get why he has these figures. I'm not saying that he's a great dude. I'm not saying that his COVID misinformation is justified. And sometimes when you have a few bucks, you think you can fix every problem. You believe that you can come in and have an opinion about everything. Anyway, should we go on shows like this that tend to platform figures that are definitely right-wing? Right-wing culture war figures, right? Like right-wing guys that definitely push the evils of critical race theory, and I don't want to call them gender Nazis, but they're kind of, very against the idea of even trans people existing. And Rogan has some horrible takes on trans youth as well. Violently horrible takes. So Ben went on with a bit of an agenda, right? And we wanted to talk to him. We didn't know this show was going to go almost 3 hours. But it was a pretty good talk. He streamed it on his channel as well, and it was a good talk. I'm actually glad the way it all happened. There's a great back and forth between Ben and Pascal about Jordan Peterson that I thought was brilliant. And you get to hear four guys with four different opinions on this episode, so I hope you appreciate the conversation. If you had something you would like to add to this conversation, please leave a comment. Let us know what you think. That music means I've been speaking for far too long. I am out.
Good morning, good afternoon, and to some of you, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. If you are new to the show, please hit the like and subscribe button and don't forget the bell, as we are constantly adding new programming to the channel. And getting that out of the way, we have an action-packed show today, and I know you guys are going to want to get your comments in for this one. And by the way, I don't even know what album this is. Let me bring in my homie, my dog, my co-host. He is the man of the 9 Mile Hour. He is the
Peace and greetings to the chat. Peace and greetings to the audience. Peace and greetings, Jason Miles. Happy Saturday to everyone. Happy close to the end of Black History Month.
Is there an end of Black History Month celebration for Haitians in Miami?
So, man, probably eating some Redouille Collet avec John and some lambi, which is.
I think you just said something about my mom.
Nah, man, that's Haitian black rice and conch and stewed conch.
Conch?
Conch, like conch means conch like for the shellfish.
Oh, okay, not the shit that Malcolm.
No, not
his hair.
No, man, not conchline.
Black rice, is it squid ink?
No, it is used from mushrooms that are boiled that give the rice the color.
And it's black or like a dark
black. The rice comes out black when you do it.
I want to try that. See where I can find that. And let's
Pascal
bring in.
Pascal is on a diet. People say Pascal likes to eat good. All Pascal is eating is salad, oatmeal, and salmon at night.
I want to give Pascal props right now, and I want everyone to know this man's level of dedication. He hit me up the other day and said, "Hey man, I'm on a diet. I got to eat nothing but oatmeal." And I called him up as his oatmeal was getting cold, and he was looking over at it. Hella sad that was all he had. He is being strict about his diet. He is being strict about his exercise because he's getting ready to make public appearances.
So get ready to try to lose some weight.
And he's getting ready to fit into some skinny jeans.
Even if I could, I would never wear no skinny jeans.
You sure? You might look like Despicable Me.
Nah, man, that would not happen.
And let's bring in our other co-host on Saturdays. He is the host of the Left Flank Vets. He is also the host of Beyond the Red Zone. Every other Monday on This is Revolution, he is the man of mystery, Marcus of the Left Flank Vets.
Yo. Good to be back. Happy that everyone's trying to be healthy and shit like that. And I really think that Pascal is training to get to go over to Ukraine and help defend against Russia. He's training to take up arms. So I applaud you. It's great.
What if Pascal was just on the sidelines yelling at everybody like Spike Lee at a basketball game?
Mark, I feel like I haven't seen you in ages, man. I heard your show is blowing up. You've been interviewing the big names in the game now. Marcus does a few interviews with us on Tuesdays when we are at a barbershop, and all of a sudden now you got celebrity left people ringing them up, trying to get an interview spot, growing the dreads, buying more cat chairs.
That's it. One day, like Winston's gonna have a nice cat hammock, diamond encrusted, of course. But no, I mean it's like it's always good. And like happy to see a lot of crossover, and not just like left media, but with black people as well. So it was like Ben Burgis.
Marcus hanging out with black people?
It was in Ben Burgis. I mean, Ben Dixon and Black Power Media have been doing some crossover that is really good stuff.
Ben Dixon is doing shows with Black Power Media about black political prisoners. I was like, is Ben Dixon doing a show in his church clothes? Is he going to minister to these cats?
Yes, he's doing a show in his church clothes. But when he did our show, he was in his
Ben
fucking gym
Dixon
wear. Just remember that. We got to tell Ben Dixon, you came in gym wear when you came on our show.
He said, well, he messes with me.
Church.
I'll come on a guest. I'm like, oh, I got to wear a button down or something like that, and he'll be in the hoodie. And then next time, oh, I'm just gonna come in the t-shirts. It's chill, and this dude's in suited and booted.
Yeah,
like,
church clothes.
I'm about to say Ben Dixon is doing that hard body coverage of black political prisoners. I thought that best he'd be doing like TD Jakes and like the Electric Slide. But I was like, what?
I guess you don't know on the show anymore.
No, listen, I'm giving jokes. No, let me clear. Ben Dixon has had me on the show a couple times. Shout out to Ben, good brother, very high quality production. I support people to go watch his shows. I encourage people to watch his show. The brother is very professional about what he does, and I give him mad props to invite me on 2 occasions. One to do Haiti coverage, and one to do a coverage for the piece I wrote, All Black People Crash Test Dummies for the Democratic Party. And he was like, brother, crash test dummies? I was like,
you got to let that sink in for a second.
Yeah, so Ben Dixon is mad cool. Shout out to Ben, friend of the show.
Well, let's bring in our guest for the day, which I really appreciate him coming on. I am a monthly participant on his show with another friend in real life, Teray Reed, where we lie and say we're going to review movies, and really we talk about a movie for 10 minutes, then make fun of Ben's childhood, and then make fun of each other, and then try really hard to see how far we can push the limit before we get canceled. So let's bring in, without any further ado, he's the author of several leather-bound books. The latest book brought him on the show that we're going to talk about. He was on recently the Joe Rogan show. Did you guys watch a little bit of Ben on Joe Rogan show?
I did this morning. I had to watch some Ben on Joe Rogan.
You guys may not know this, but I was talking to Ben before he went on Joe Rogan, like Mick from Rocky, early Rocky movies.
Yep.
you got lightning, you got crap thunder, Burgess.
You got diamond teeth, Ben. You got diamond teeth. You're gonna chew them up.
Please welcome. You know him from his show, Give Them an Argument. You know him from. You just know him. That's why you're watching right now, because you know him. Some of you want to say, hey, some of you want to give him a middle finger. Doesn't matter. We can't see it anyway. Please welcome Ben Burgis.
Ben,
what's up?
Ben Burgis, welcome to the show. I think this is your 3rd or 4th appearance on our show.
Something like that.
I want to welcome you, my friend, from your experience on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Thank you.
For the brothers and sisters in the hood, we are going to interrogate you right now about the role socializing with the enemy, Joe Rogan. So we have some questions to address you for the brothers and sisters in the hood, dealing with Mr. Rogan, who we're trying to decide, is he enemy of the people?
I'll imagine talking like 1970. Like your hair just grew.
Afro just came right out of my head.
Are you ready to address the problems in the immunity, Mr. Rogan?
But seriously, Ben, we've talked enough to know that you are not a fan of quote unquote cancel culture or censoring commentary, which I find ironic because I'm kind of in a little position like that right now with my own commentary, but that's another subject matter.
I think I've gotten some flack for exactly the same subject this week.
Well, you know what, man? You and I might agree or disagree, but I respect that. But listen, I want to stick to the question. Contrary to what you might believe, Ben, I think it's good that you went on Joe Rogan. And I'll be very honest. If Joe Rogan gave me an opportunity to go on this show, I would have gone too. But I clearly would have had conversation with him about some of the commentary of his that I find problematic. And I'll be very honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Rogan's conversation about COVID, that doesn't bother me as much.
Mm-hmm.
Because I believe that the ruling class has blown COVID so bad that I can
Mm-hmm.
understand why people have that level of skepticism.
Mm-hmm.
I have issues with Rogan platforming scientific racists, which he
Mhm.
has. I have issues with Rogan platforming people who are, I think are fairly racist as well, which he has. But I don't have an issue with him having the right to do so. I
Mhm.
just find that sometimes when he has them on, he doesn't really challenge them in a way that I think is really valuable, and simply sometimes co-signs them, which I
Mhm.
find problematic. But where I will agree with you, Ben, is that I wouldn't say we should cancel Joe Rogan.
Mhm.
I'm not a fan of canceling. I'm not a fan of cancel culture at all. But I think there's a distinction between saying we shouldn't cancel people or saying we should cancel people and
Mhm.
saying, like, I don't want to cancel a motherfucker, but I think he's a racist piece of shit. And I should be able to say he's a racist piece
Mhm.
of shit. And if my saying that gets his ratings to go down, why am I not exercising my free market values in the marketplace? Now, I'm not saying I believe Rogan's a racist piece of shit. What I'm saying is that if we believe that we don't want to have cancel culture,
Mhm.
but we want to have people express their opinions, why can't they express their opinions in a way where they negatively affect a media personality, not by saying company X fire him, but they drive his ratings down and he ends up getting canceled by the nature of the opprobrium that is caused by his opposition.
Well, I'll raise you this.
Mhm.
I want to get Ben's perspective on this. Joe Rogan, while I'm not a huge fan of his show,
Mhm.
he's someone that I literally grew up with, right? He was on news radio when I was younger. He did Fear Factor, and I've been watching UFC. I don't watch it anymore, but I've been watching UFC since UFC like 1 and 2, when there were like bootleg video VHS cassettes that only your weird friends that had fake ninja swords could get.
Yeah, there's
In
filming
high
in
school?
the garage.
Yeah, totally doing weird ninja shit in the garage with the one kid nobody wanted to play with. So, I understand his popularity. I also understand that outrage sells.
Mhm.
And I think one thing Joe Rogan does is, and I think people don't really get this, is he's been in Hollywood probably since his 20s.
Mm.
So for the better part of his adult life, it's not like he's sitting around, reading Chomsky and going to Occupy marches, right? He's in circles where people are going to be like, dude, I just heard this great guy, Jordan Peterson, check it out, right? That's the kind of sphere of influence that he's around. And I'm not saying this is good or bad, just bringing some sort of context to it. He's also a foul-mouthed comedian
Mhm.
that is always going to push the envelope. So a lot of the comments that are going to come out about him, there's so many people that hate him. And my question is, do people hate him because he's more popular to them? Or do they hate him for some legitimate reason? And since he has this massive platform where people are really getting influenced by the guests that come on his show, if you think that Jordan Peterson going on his show is that influential, then Cornel West going on his show is equally as influential. So if you don't want him to exist, what's going to take his place? For the last 40 years, media that we consume has been devolving. Geraldo used to be a news guy. We all forget that he broke the story that shut down a mental institution. He used to kind of try to do newsy stuff, right? Here's a black nationalist, Roy Ennis. Here's a white supremacist. And then they're just naturally going to clash and fight. And that was ratings for him. And that changed TV. And then it just devolved into, how can I get people in trailer parks to punch each other for screwing their own cousin? And I don't think it's getting much better than where we are now with people like Joe Rogan. It's just like outrage sells. I'm going to give you some outrage. Jordan Peterson gets a ton of engagement, a ridiculous amount of engagement. So I'm going to have him on, and my brand is I have conversations with people. They sit down in front of me, and I just talk to them. People go, he's not that bright. He's not. You're not watching him because you want to fucking learn shit. You're just hearing a conversation. So does he have to totally go away? Because if he goes away, how can these left perspectives get out there? I was looking at numbers for some of the bigger people on the left. We'll throw Glenn Greenwald in there, right? Just for conversation's sake, regardless of how people want to feel about him. One of his more watched videos has less than 100,000 views. Abby Martin just interviewed Oliver Stone, award-winning filmmaker Oliver Stone. And Abby Martin has a pretty big internet presence, under 100,000 views. Jordan Peterson makes one appearance on some a-hole show. It's 1 million views. Joe Rogan has millions of people listening. So doesn't it help our cause in building out this grander thing that we call the left if we can get on these platforms? I'm just asking the question for conversation's sake. And I'll take my answer off air. Thank you.
Please don't take your answer off air. I do want to start with Pascal's question, and the answer is I completely agree with him. I don't know why anyone would think I would disagree with that. I think that if somebody's a piece of shit and you think they're a piece of shit and you say so, and that has a bad effect on their ratings, I think that's completely legitimate. That's free speech. I'm 100% with Pascal on that. I think though, first of all, I think, not that he's above criticism or anything. I actually don't think Joe Rogan's a piece of shit, but I think what I'd rather focus on though, is not the sort of state of the soul of this one guy, right? This podcaster who like has some views I like, some views I don't like. I find him personally likable, but I don't think that's the point, right? I don't think that's what it's most useful to have conversation about. I think the most useful thing that's to have conversation about, that goes to Jason's point, is not like, does Joe Rogan have like a right to have people not say mean things about him? He certainly does not. It's what is the approach to this platform that's going to be the most useful to the left. And I think a lot of people on the left, even in contexts that are actual debates, right? Like I did one of those with Charlie Kirk last fall, and obviously the tenor of that is very, very different, from something like going on, like a talk show like Joe Rogan, where he wants to have a friendly conversation, and it's a good chance to just speak directly to his audience. But even in a debate, I don't like the way that a lot of people on the left approach that, because I think a lot of people on the left have the view that what they do when they're given these opportunities is they go on and they do things to try to make their people who are already fans of them slow clap. And I think that's basically a waste of time. I mean, maybe there's some value to it, depending on who you're talking to, but I don't think it's that useful. I think that, with somebody like Charlie Kirk, who, I basically think he's a fraud, and, pretended to be some kind of populist when he's nothing of the kind. And so the agenda is to try to show that, right? So I do that, but even there, I'm trying to pitch it in a way that might make some people who think, that might make some people who take Charlie Kirk seriously or willing to give him a hearing, that might make them have second thoughts, right? Even with Charlie Kirk's audience, that's the goal, right? Because, just telling my audience that Charlie Kirk sucks, isn't advancing the needle on anything. They already think Charlie Kirk sucks, right? Whereas if I could say that, if I could make these points about the contradictions in his alleged politics in ways that make sense, that might actually plant some seeds of fans, I think that's valuable. I think Joe Rogan is a very different context. I think that with Joe Rogan, question is what's the most useful way to use that platform? And I think the most useful way to use that platform is to take every conceivable opportunity to get in things to the conversation that are important to us to get our message out, right? That's So, Medicare for all, unions, worker co-ops, the post office, teachers unions, postal banking, house, like capitalism, economic inequality, why anti-CRT laws are bad. I talked to him about that, why, completely disallowing trans kids from transitioning, is a terrible idea. I talked to him about that. And I think that's, I think that focusing on all that, why the United States shouldn't have this globe-spanning empire and those resources should be spent at home. I talked to him about that. And man, why people should read Adolf Reed. I talked to him about that in like the first 30 seconds. I held up Adolf's new book. I think that's by far the most useful way to use that platform. I saw somebody in the chat, asking how, whether there was any, like sort of pre-show agreement or anything. There wasn't, there was no discussion beforehand of what was going to be talked about. But I certainly had an agenda, and my agenda was very simple. Right?
They thought there was a pre-show agreement. Like he said, all right, you can't call my mom a whore.
People would do that.
Like my agenda was talk a lot about the bread and butter socialist issues that that I think are most important to get across to his massive audience, that are most important to make these points about, and do it without seeming like do it while seeming like approachable and likable and not like weird and annoying to Rogan's audience. Because I'm going to be honest, 99.9% of lefty podcasters in that situation, they would have made leftists happier than I did, because they wouldn't have gone, it's like, oh, you didn't push back enough, right? They would have made leftists happier, but it wouldn't have done shit with anybody who's persuadable in Rogan's audience. Whereas if you can like have a friendly conversation of the kind that's going to be appealing to the millions of people who basically like this guy, and you can, in the course of doing that, you can make all the political points that you want, that you want them to hear. That actually might get some people thinking about those points. And if there's anything you can do with that platform, it's that. I mean, I don't understand what the alternative game plan is that anybody would think would be a better use of that time. I mean,
I'd like to address that those points. First of all, I actually agree that there should be individuals on the left that do debate high-profile figures on the right. I don't think everyone should do it. Obviously, we know it's not like we have a union or a club or a organization that can discern these things. Right?
Did you get the email?
I understand. I'm speaking I'm speaking aspirationally, but I do believe that there should be people who have coherent left politics of a type that are at least have some kind of universal appeal by all of the various sects on the left, who are known to engage right-wing figures. And I think that what would be ideal is to have individuals who that's all they do. They do that regularly. Is that they will we want to have a debate. Let's go on. Let's debate Jordan Peterson. Let's debate Charlie Kirk. Let's debate Ben
Shapiro.
The guys, Fox News guys. Fox News guys.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because Ben is on Call-In. Shout out to Call-In and Ben. I had to do Ben's Call-In show. Deep State Kuba did Ben's Call-In show yesterday, so please check that out. They actually tweeted, why doesn't Ben Shapiro debate Ben Burgis after you did the Rogan show?
Yeah, because when I was on the Rogan show, I slipped that in, right? I was like, hey, if Ben, it was actually kind of a funny moment, because I was not expecting this. Like, he spent like 2 minutes making fun of how Ben Shapiro talks, and his insane view that gay people have a moral obligation to have sex with women. But then, I said, but then I said, hey, Ben Shapiro ever wanted to come on my show, and argue with me, I'd certainly do that. And he was like, oh yeah, man, I think you'd do it, So I don't think he'd do it, but but the more that could get out there, the better it is, because best case scenario, he actually does do it, which I think would be useful. And worst case scenario, it's fun to give him shit about the fact that he won't do it.
Mhm.
Right. No, but again, my original position is that I do agree that we should have in either an individual or certain individuals who are tasked with debating the right. I don't think everyone on the left should do this because I think that a lot of people on the left are just, they're not up for the task. However, at the same time,
Yeah, it's not a good
That's
use of
fair.
everybody's time.
That's
There
fair.
are different people who are
and I think a lot of people would do it and make the left look bad,
right.
quite frankly. However, in terms of strategy with forums,
Mm-hmm.
it depends. For example, I'm looking at
Completely
moments of
agree.
history. When James Baldwin debated William F. Buckley, James Baldwin was not trying to win over readers of National Review.
No.
Different time, though.
No, I mean, I also think it's just a different context. I mean, I think
exactly.
I think it just depends who you're talking to and
There
who
you go.
who you think is persuadable, who you think you can move the needle
the
with,
nature of the platform, et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah,
my position is that there are certain times and the nature of the platform, your strategy in debating these right wingers is not going to be the same.
Totally.
I see the logic in when going on Joe Rogan's platform, you have a more amenable, conciliatory, friendly demeanor. One, for several reasons. First reason, I don't think that Joe Rogan is ideologically a right winger.
Right.
I know a lot of people are going to be pissed off because I just said that, but I don't believe he's ideologically a right winger. I frankly don't even think Joe Rogan knows what his politics really are. I think they're just kind of evolving, fluid. There are things that he likes about this. There are things he likes about that. There are things he doesn't like about this. There are things he doesn't like about that. So I think that he has a much more kind of and quite frankly, there's nothing wrong with that. I think that explains a lot of Americans, to be very honest with you. A whole lot of Americans, which is cool.
I think this episode might be a world record for the number of minutes I've talked to Pascal without disagreeing about anything.
We might. Rogan is reactionary, and so are 3/4 of the people that go to my mom's church. And then
all right, so it's nobody's gonna be canceled with the public for anything we say here, but Pascal's gonna have explaining to do. And
but the point I'm going to say is that I want to bear with me here. Yeah. I really want to focus on the strategy of these debating things.
Yep.
And let's go back to that James Baldwin Buckley analogy. Baldwin went into that debate to make sure that his goal was to discredit the political and ideological position of William F. Buckley. Which, understanding what Buckley's position was at that time, he was anti-integration, he was anti-Civil Rights Act, he was basically against all of those things, was a sound position. I think that when it comes to certain individuals on the left, we have, and who they're going to debate on the right, there has to be discernment as to what platform or where you're going to and why, and are you doing this because you want to win over some of their supporters? Which I think you can make an argument with maybe some of Rogan's viewers. You might, because again, I don't think he's an ideological show. Or are you going there to discredit the ideological assertions that this person is making? My position is that if Ben Burgis was going on a debate with Jordan Peterson, you're not going to win over Jordan Peterson followers. That's not your goal. Your goal in that debate is not to be like, oh, I want to expand the Overton window to Jordan Peterson fans. No, your goal is to intellectually delegitimize his ideological and intellectual and philosophical positions on core subjects that are integral to your politics. Would I be correct or incorrect?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Buckley example is really interesting. That's actually, I've watched that debate. That's on my channel. We do these weekly reviews of old debates, and that was actually the very first one that we did back in I don't know, late 2020 or early 2021. And I think in the Buckley case, it is very clear, right? Because as you say, I think I think for a variety of reasons, like the idea that there's like a significant portion of like National Review readers in 1963 or whatever was what year did that debate happen? Do you know?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, it was something like that. It was like the height of the civil rights movement, but they had, I think, for a variety of reasons that wasn't going to happen, and that's probably not the most important thing it could have done. I think the most important thing it could do is take Buckley from looking like this respectable kind of voice that would be taken seriously as, oh, he's a conservative, but whatever. To know this guy is a troglodyte, right? He's opposed to he's opposed to giving people basic legal rights. Which, by the way, I want to go back to your Jordan Peterson example in a second, but I think that the most revealing moment in that debate with Buckley and Baldwin was when Buckley was, I'm not going to try to imitate William F. Buckley's accent, but he was sort of in his like weird laconic way. He was saying, it's like, well, what do you want me to do? How like sure, that it's going to take a long time to get over his attitudes. What are we supposed to do? And somebody in the audience like heckles him and calls out, well, you could let them vote in Alabama. and Buckley's response is, well, if I had my way, most white people in Alabama would be able to vote.
I remember that line. I remember that line.
Which is which I think is like really I think is an incredibly revealing moment for what Buckley.
Basically, William F. Buckley's arguing that he wants to go back to the days before Andrew Jackson, when there was no white male suffrage.
Yeah, no, exactly. So which makes sense. I mean, he just hates poor people. I mean, I think with Jordan Peterson, it's an interesting case because I think that he has a couple of audiences and they're probably shifted. Like I think people shift from one to the other. So there's an audience of people who like him because he says anti-trans things, or who like him. Basically they're just attracted to him as a right-wing culture warrior. And those people, I completely agree with you. I don't think that there's. I mean, sometimes some of them will change their mind, but it's going to take a very that's not like a what you're trying to like. I don't think it's a realistic goal for most of those people. I think that but I would just also point out that one thing I do think is interesting about Peterson, the only reason I'm hesitating about agreeing or disagreeing with your analysis there, is that I think Jordan Peterson, he has those people who come to him as a right-wing culture warrior. But as easy as this is to forget, because that's the only capacity that we ever know him in, he also has, like, his most successful book is basically a self-help book. And there are people who come to him for that, and who, want to and there are people who I've even had tell me, like, look, I really used to really like Jordan Peterson because he helped me, he helped me kick my heroin habit. He helped me whatever, right? Because this is the sort of thing, that he's, going out there doing. I mean, it's like pretty basic anodyne self-help you get anywhere, right? But there are people who are attracted to him for that. And then some of those people, then they come for that, and then they stick around for the toxic right-wing politics. And so I do think that with some of those people, you might actually, I mean, like some, a couple of people who sent me messages like that have said, but now I kind of see that he's an asshole, right? Because of stuff that you and other people have said. So I think some people like that might actually come around. But I think it's probably true, thinking about this as I'm talking, but I think it's probably true that even with those people, like, it would still, I think a much more confrontational way of doing it would still make sense, because I think that it's not, it's not like talking to somebody like Rogan, who, as you point out, like, doesn't really have a fixed ideology. He just kind of has, so there are things that he likes, there are things he doesn't like. In other words, he's like an awful lot of Americans. With somebody like Peterson, I think that there's such like deep opposition there, and that like really, I think there's still some finessing about how you would do it, because if you just seem like the kind of person that they're expecting, who's just going to be some like shrill blue-haired college kid who's like, finger wagging, right? I don't know how much that's going to do, but I still think the agenda should basically be to say, this guy, like, basically make it clear that this guy is an idiot, that he's just spouting complete nonsense, that that none of this makes sense.
I'm glad you said that, because I'll be this is my personal kind of approach, is that I'm not necessarily interested. I wouldn't be if I was in the position where I was chosen to date, hypothetically, to debate Peterson. My goal wouldn't necessarily be to make him come out like an idiot per se. I don't believe that Jordan Peterson is an idiot. Jordan Peterson is a very intelligent man. Very intelligent man. He's just very wrong. And I don't want to say, I don't even want to say Jordan Peterson is wrong. He's just reactionary in the true sense of the word.
But do you think reaction is his brand, though, at this point? I mean, he was a professor that was, a whatever dude. He says some fucked up shit about trans people, a law that he never got persecuted for. And all of a sudden, he gets, 6-figure speaking fees.
Yeah, and if I could just interject, I mean, I know what Pascal means when he says he's not an idiot. He's a very intelligent man. But I also think it's not just that he's a reactionary, although he certainly is, right? It's that he also, okay, William F. Buckley was just a reactionary, right? Like a very smart guy, but very evil values. But anytime I've ever seen a clip of William F. Buckley talking, I never had any doubt about what he was trying to say. I've seen many clips of Jordan Peterson where it's just this word salad of babbling nonsense. Yeah,
that's true. There is a snake oil salesman component to Peterson.
I think whatever intelligence Peterson had is morphed into something else, into where you're just getting a whole lot of gobbledygook.
Marcus, you didn't get it, sunshine.
I mean,
I think that
you're eating meat to the point you might die. Right? I don't know how much intelligence is involved.
To be transparent,
I've been shitting a 2x4 for a week now.
To be transparent, right? Jordan Peterson is on his hustle. He's on his grind. He's on his hustle. This is a grind. I actually think that if you sat Jordan Peterson down with some drinks in a room by himself, he's like, yeah, of course, 3/4 of the things I say are bullshit. God damn it, I got 2 million views on my last YouTube. Are you crazy?
Look at my hot daughter.
Which by the way, the Russell Sabriglia, who I've had out a few times, is
Russell.
Russell. Okay, yeah. So he, when he was driving, so I don't know, maybe you've heard this before about when he was driving Slavoj Žižek to the debate with Peterson and in 2019 in Toronto, in which, by the way, to Pascal's point, Slavoj gave away his half of the speaking fee to an indigenous charity, and
oh shit,
and Peterson did not, and from what he said, it sounded like Peterson was very excited about how much money they were making for those ticket sales. But also, I was just going to say, the hot daughter, that while they were on their way over, they were going to have dinner with everybody before the debate. And Russell was filling in Slavoj about all the different people he was going to meet, and he started to describe Michaela Peterson, the daughter, and he told her about those weird tweets that they'd exchanged back and forth, with she's sending a picture of herself in a bikini to her dad, and so see, people say this all beef diet makes us unhealthy, but it's pretty healthy to me, actual tweet, and so when they met, you could just imagine the way that Slavoj is. It's he's being introduced to everybody, and he's introduced to her, and he shakes her hand. It's you can see the light bulb going off over his head. Says, "Ah, yes, the beef girl." Goes over about as well as you'd think. But yeah, I mean, I think that how sincere Peterson is about it is hard to say. I mean, I think idiot was actually a poorly chosen word. I think what I should have said was crazy. I think that's the more precise way to get across what I'm trying to get across there. That I think that he, to the extent that you think he's being sincere about all of this, I think he just believes some bizarre nonsense, and a lot of what he's saying just doesn't make any sense if you think about it for 10 seconds. And that I think that would actually, with him specifically, right? You'd still want to think a little bit about how you framed it, right? But with him specifically, I think that it would be good to try to get that across, because I think that part of how that pipeline goes, right? That like people might be attracted to him for, things that he says that aren't that bad or whatever. That they, like, look, you should clean your room, right?
Well,
That's good advice.
let me tell you what my agenda or strategy would be. My goal, if I were to be able to debate Jordan Peterson, would be to expose to people what Jordan Peterson's true agenda is. And when I say he's a reactionary, he's a reactionary. Jordan Peterson's ideal view of what life was in America was in 1957, when only white men had any kind of jobs worth a damn. Women only stayed at home, and everyone else who were not white men was subservient and servile only to white men.
You people
Jordan Peterson, I put a tweet up a while ago. You may or may not have seen it, Ben. Is that Jordan Peterson is the Lothrop Stoddard of the 21st century. And if people are not familiar with Lothrop Stoddard, Stoddard was a very popular personality in the intellectual sphere of the early 20th century, the debate scene. He debated Du Bois. He was a eugenicist. He was a rabid white supremacist, and he was profoundly racist. And his hustle was going around trying to make the intellectual arguments to justify why his position was important. He was a reactionary, and yes, his PhD dissertation was about the Haitian Revolution. And my position is,
what did he say?
I haven't read it, but I think that he's trying to. I don't know what it is, but I think it was some kind of rationalization of why this is disastrous of having Negroes, self-governance, so on and so forth. But the large point I was going to say is that when I view Jordan Peterson, and Ben, if you digress in your agreement on this phenomenon, I have no problem with it, because it's not necessarily a materialist left position. It's kind of a cosmological position, and you may disagree. I respect it. There's a phenomenon called Centennialism. You may or may not have heard of it. Centennialism proposes that at every centennial moment in history, there are basic sociological phenomenon that are recalibrated to carry capitalism and world events into the new century. In other words, in the early, usually they occur around wars, around certain geostrategic realities. For example, in the early 20th century, for people who don't know, there was discourse around sexual orientation. If you read the works of Havelock Ellis, transgenderism, reproductive rights, eugenics, immigration, racial supremacy, the future of the white race, population demographics, all of this discourse was very popular in the early 20th century. If you look at the scholarship of the late 19th century, you realize that the rise of Darwinism, scientific racism, and all of these other phenomenon, all of these academic disciplines, and this focus on intellectualizing phenomenon to literally give legitimacy to economic inequality correlate directly to crises of capitalism, taking them into the 20th century. My position, and again, Ben, I'm not saying that I require you or think that you may or may not believe in centennialism or this position. My position is that what we are experiencing now in the early 21st century is basically a form of a manifestation of social phenomenon that are being experienced as a product of a crisis of capitalism that are needing a way to rationalize it, to take it into the 21st century. And that, for me, I look at Peterson as the 21st century manifestation of Lothrop Stoddard, who is trying to redeem white male patriarchal exceptionalism because he sees various factors in the world putting that position in jeopardy.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's certainly true that there are things that people say and arguments that people make at different times that that echo, what people have said at earlier times. I mean, I don't know that there's like a particular like interval or whatever, but I think that it is really striking, though. I remember that one of the first, because I spent way too, like in some ways, like everything I'm doing now, I'm doing because of Jordan Peterson, because I have because back in 2018, when I wasn't, I'd like write an article for Counterpunch every 6 months, but like otherwise, I didn't spend that much time doing political things, but I ended up spending way too.
I discovered you with your Jordan Peterson debunking videos when it was like you in a classroom with a hella loud ass echo.
Yeah. The early struggles with audio or something else, so like back then, right? I mean, I wasn't spending that much time on like basically my main interaction with politics was argue with people about it on Facebook. This is like 2018, early 2018, but there were people who were sort of people that I'd known a little bit at various points early in my life, sort of extended friend group or extended family, who were getting into this guy, right? And this was like the kind of first splash of Peterson, and I spent way too much time like arguing with these people about it online, because it was like, how do you not see that this guy is ridiculous? He's a lunatic. And by the way, I mean, I do think that specifically, just to not let the original context, what Pascal was raising, get lost. I think that's because I think so much of his effectiveness in his specific case comes from the fact that he's like the sage, like a guru, that like, I think kind of piercing that a little bit, and like showing like how much of it like doesn't make sense. I think would be important in that context. So I think like that would be a context where like getting more into philosophy and stuff like that would actually be a valuable thing in a political debate. But but since I was spending all this time doing that, and I spent like way too much time reading about Peterson and to like argue with people about him. That's how our friend Doug Lane, who I'd known from a non-political context years ago, was organizing this conference about Peterson because Doug had actually had Jordan Peterson scheduled to come on his podcast. And then presumably Peterson or somebody who worked for him finally got around to Googling Doug, and then they decided not, so they backed out, right? They didn't do it. Yeah. And then shortly after that,
say it again for the people in the back.
Yeah. Peterson backed out of the planned conversation with Doug, right? He didn't want
Jordan Peterson backed out
of
a planned conversation with Doug Lane. Doug Lane, our Doug Lane. The Doug Lane.
Yeah,
the white man that we own.
That's right. Yeah, your house, Doug.
Doug.
That's right. Who honestly, I've had a million conversations with Doug, including at least 100,000 where we were disagreeing to some extent, and he's not that scary. Like I think you can have a conversation with Doug and disagree with him, and you'll be fine. But apparently that was scary to Jordan Peterson, so he backed out of that. And then shortly afterwards, actually Peterson was on Joe Rogan, and Joe was like, "Hey, so dude, why don't you? You're always talking about these like equality of outcome Marxists. Like, why don't you ever debate any of them?" And Peterson said, "Well, they don't want to talk to me," and that. And that pissed off Doug so much, he organized this conference. He called Jordan Peterson a conference in lieu of a debate. I don't want to say he did all of the organizing of the conference. There's the people he's working with in Idaho, but but that was his. He was like partnering with them to do it. And so because I knew Doug a little bit before that, I saw him post that the announcement for the conference. I was like, oh yeah, I'd like to do that. I got in touch with him about that. I'd totally like do like a presentation, write a paper about this. And then over the course of that conversation, he was like, well, actually, I wonder if you'd like to write a book for us, at Zero. And that's everything else, came out of that, so I think one of the first things I watched, and this is actually going back to what, Pascal's point about Centennialism, one of the first things I watched that I thought was a good sort of takedown of Jordan Peterson was by the YouTuber Natalie Wynn, a lot of people know her better by the name of her channel, ContraPoints, and one of the most, and like, it's a very funny video. People should check it out. I still think it's some of her best work. But in the it's just got this like nice 2 minutes like making fun of the idea that postmodernism and Marxism are the same thing. It's all good, but like the one thing that I found really telling, I think she says in that video, I might be getting my wires crossed, but I think it's in there, is that the strategy that Peterson has for like opposing, postmodern neo-Marxism, whatever the hell he thinks that is, right? That this sort of blob of like Marxism and postmodernism and blue-haired college kids, that he's constructed in his head to oppose, that his strategy for like his argument against them is something that could have been used at any time in history. Like if you were like a French aristocrat in 1789, right? You could say everything that Peterson is saying about how human beings are naturally hierarchical, and and if you try to mess with that, you're just gonna get catastrophic results because it's so deep in our nature. And all of these arguments that Peterson will make are things that, you could make as a French aristocrat in 1789. You could make it as like a antebellum defender of slavery, in 1860.
Absolutely.
You could make it as somebody who's arguing that women shouldn't be allowed to vote in 1918. Like that. It's such a like rudimentary, like kind of, like it's because it's just an anti-progress argument, right? So it could be used against any form of progress. You could just plug it in at any point.
Very, very good points, Ben, because what is the real nature of being a reactionary? Because a lot of people use that term. Reactionary is someone who wants to go to a time that is from before, that is considered the halcyon days of when things were good. All right. And the reactionaries generally are people who want to cling to a time before members of society challenge the social political status quo in order to make those societies more inclusive of their participation or redistributive in terms of wealth and resources from that society. So the nature of the Jordan Peterson project is to tell you that movements or phenomenon that challenge the natural hierarchical standards that are innate to human beings. Because I believe that Peterson, correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, is a strong believer in biological determinism.
Definitely. Yeah.
And I want to kind of shift the conversation back to where we were originally with the idea of going on larger platforms that may not be left friendly, right?
Yeah.
MSNBC, Fox News. You went on Joe Rogan recently. A few months ago, I had to make an intro video, and a lot of the intro videos I was making for a while, because we had all these zero books writers that wanted to write about like postmodernism and post leftist shit. I had to get a lot of Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson clips, and in cutting all this footage and listening to those conversations, I read the comments, and Rogan's a popular show, so there's thousands of comments. And I didn't read all 10,000 comments, but I did read several comments. And one thing I kind of gathered from his audience is that a lot of them are apolitical. So that's why, again, I think we get so captured by the fact that Jordan Peterson goes on there and the larger shows in the podcast sphere talk about it, because that is clippable material. They never talk about the 5 weeks straight of Hollywood personalities, other comedians, and he just apolitical shows that he does throughout the
I mean, the episodes, I believe, directly before to after mine were about cooking. So I think that's literally true, at least judging by the clips I saw on his YouTube show. Definitely at least one of them was, but it was like with a chef. I do think that, and I think that is absolutely true. Marcus, what's your cat's name?
Winston.
Okay.
Not after Churchill.
I was just thinking that, but I wasn't going to insult you by
That's the
suggesting
first
that you
thing.
named your
Like,
cat after
absolutely not.
Churchill.
Fuck that guy.
But it's like, no, surely it's not Churchill. Come on, they wouldn't have him on This Is Revolution if it was Churchill. But yeah.
Yo, Churchill, you see, there's the context of it all.
yeah, exactly. But I think, since you did, so yeah, I mean, so okay, so on Rogan, I do think this is an interesting point that like he does, the thing that I think is true that people, one thing that's true that people say is critical of him is that like he has many fewer leftists on than people with much worse politics, right? Like I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
And which is, by the way, one of the reasons I think that it would be incredibly self-defeating for a leftist not to go on with a good chance, right? But I think that's true. But it's also true and interesting to me, right? That when you think about this, I wasn't going to argue with him about COVID. I mean, Osterholm had just been on, right? For like do a whole thing entirely devoted to doing that. But my level of awareness, my level of like COVID, is like I try not to think about it, and like I just try to like pay attention vaguely to like whether public health authorities think I still need to wear a mask, and if so, where. That's kind of the that's kind of the extent of my interaction with that. But so I'd much rather talk about Medicare for all and labor unions and why the CRT laws are garbage and all of that. But I think. But I think it is also interesting to note that because he is so eclectic, when he does have, he's had like Abby Martin like talking about Gaza several times, on the show, and I think that there's I think the dynamics of that are more complicated than people think they are. But that said, I mean, to Jason's point, yeah, this is also a guy who's like. He is like a lot of Americans, and I don't want to exaggerate his everymanness. He's obviously a very specific type, of guy, right? But like, and whatever. I mean, I've always gotten along well with guys like that. So I got along well with Rogan, but like but I think that, but he is like, he's somewhat interested in politics now. I have political guests on, but he's probably more interested in MMA. Well, definitely more interested in MMA,
drugs,
psychedelics, various sports, comedy. Like, and he has like the guests, like those areas when you put them all together, right? The guests who come from all of those are like probably 5 to 1 more frequent than the guests who come from the sphere of politics at all. But I did just want to make the point, right? That Jason introduced the question by talking about like going on Fox and MSNBC and all of that, right? And I think that, even though like the question of like which is like worse, right? Those things are Rogan, I think depends a little bit on whether you think that it's you're more worried about ideas that are worse than the mainstream getting out there, or ideas that are better than the mainstream not getting out there. But I think the one really crucial difference is not about politics at all. It's about format, right? That if I, unless you're Bernie Sanders, you get to do a whole like town hall on Fox, or you get to, do the like in-depth interview with Rachel Maddow or whatever. That's obviously different. And by the way, I mean, Bernie killed that when he did that town hall on Fox. He got this Fox News audience like to clap for if they'd be willing to give up their private health insurance, for national health care. But most people, if any of us were invited on Fox, and I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, right? I mean, I think like my instinct would always be to err on the side of doing it. But if we were invited on Fox, or for that matter, MSNBC, what would that be? That would be like, that would be a couple of segments, like, at best, a couple segments, realistically one segment between commercial breaks. And there'd be like a really specific thing they'd ask. And if you wanted to get in something else, or something that challenged their narrative, or some other subject you didn't think you would bring up, you would have like 30 seconds to like find a creative way to slip it in, before the host interrupted you or before you went to commercial. Whereas with Joe Rogan, you can like he'll do these 3-hour interviews. So what that means is that you can cover a lot of stuff, and not always everything you want to, as I now know, because because the subject changes quickly, but you can cover a lot of stuff. And so even if it's not the primary thing that he wanted to talk to you about, right, you can actually devote a lot of minutes when you put it all together to talking to about other subjects that you might want to get in there as much as possible. And I think my view is that every minute of that is valuable, because you have this giant audience that's very heterogeneous. A lot of it's just apolitical, like Jason says. Some of them are like hardcore conservatives who like some of the more reactionary guests he brings on. I've definitely gotten a few kill the commie comments about me since the not literally, but you know what I'm saying, since I went on. But there are also lots of people in his audience who I think have about his politics, which is to say that they have there might be certain right-wing or reactionary ideas that have some level of pull with them, but they have but also, if you also they're actually very open to some redistributive left-wing ideas, if they're actually brought to their attention, they'll think about that. They're certain, maybe a little annoyed by certain cultural trends, but they have in other words, if I guess the thing I push is, if we can't speak to people with that profile that I'm describing,
yes,
then I don't know how anything I don't know what kind of hope for even a mildly social democratic platform, never mind anything that goes beyond that, there is in a country where such a giant portion of the public of the working class public, people who don't have $200 million contracts with Spotify, either have that exact combination of views I just said, or worse.
I mean, Marcus, you were in the military, so when speaking about reactionary people, you went from being would you mildly apolitical before you went into coming out and being like, I am a socialist?
Yeah, and I wouldn't say I busted out with the sickle hammer on my chest, just as I was getting out of the military. I mean, for me, I've talked about this before. Being in the military is is what made me start questioning, and it was some of the experiences that I had, just wondering why the hell am I here? They'll tell you all the details about such a specific this whatever scenario. You don't get the context, and when I started pulling that thread, I mean, it's pulling the whole library of information onto you, and it's kind of and then next thing you know, you got Bernie and Hillary, and it was the no-fly zone. Hillary says, "Hey, she's gonna do a no-fly zone." Bernie says, "We can't go to war. We can't even take care of the veterans that we got. We're destroying all these countries and stuff like that." And that for me was oh, okay, hey, there's an actual project to this thing. And then here we are today, where whatever that says. But what happened? The people in the military and the people that we're describing as Joe Rogan's audience are very much that, and there are people, and like you said, apolitical, and I say a lot of people in the military, they're independent, apolitical. They know that both Republicans and Democrats suck, because both Republicans and Democrats make the military. There's no delineation between the parties when it comes to the military industrial complex, and so they know, don't trust the U.S. The U.S. government can be some of the dumbest people on the planet, but they also provide you with everything that you need. And so yeah, and that's where I agree a lot with as far as the audience and the malleability of their opinion. I would agree with that, as far as there's a lot of people, because I still have conversations with a lot of people that I served with who are not socialists, not even Democrats. And there's a lot of frustrating conversations, but at the end of the day, it is me changing their mind on like these little tidbits of things as we go along and, you know, go through our lives and shit like that. Cause I had a buddy who was complaining about not getting, you know, time off because, you know, just had a kid and he's there bitching. Is like, why? I live in New York. Why isn't this happening? Why don't I have paid time off? I thought this is a liberal place. And I'm like, well, let me tell you about liberals. So
I think that's where the conversation got interesting with Ben and Joe, because, you know, Joe Rogan lives in a world of just himself and other people like him. And again, I think a lot of cats are disconnected from that idea of just being around wealthy people that have staff. Like, I remember a friend was telling me that someone in our sphere was hanging around Lars, and Lars was saying, man, it's so hard to get a good male nanny. Like, that's just not a conversation that we're going to have amongst each other. And there was a point where you guys were talking about bosses and labor. And Joe Rogan is like, you know, Jeff Bezos worked so hard, like 16. I think I had to be working like 16-hour days. And I was thinking to myself, doing fucking what?
Yeah, which I did say in that part of the conversation. And although that went off on a weird tangent, because I said, well, because I made the point that I was talking about economic inequality, and I said, look, if, you know, the people you know, who are, you know, just like crazily busting their asses in Amazon warehouses, while their boss, you know, literally makes enough to make his, you know, to buy his own spaceship, and then he, you know, and in over the course of talking about that, right, and like talking about, you know, worker co-ops, worker ownership, is look at kind of corporations that dominate the economy right now. You know, I mean, the instead of people sort of voting on, you know, on the you know, like revenue, on like how the revenue is distributed, right? You know, that the you know, voting on pay scales, right? You know, the boss just decides, right? So that's how you get this level of disparity. And you know, he was like, that was like, there were a lot of stuff. There was a lot of the social democratic stuff earlier in the conversation that like I got him to like enthusiastically agree to, you know, like different government programs we should have and stuff. But that was the point where like you could tell that was like a little too far, right? You know, it's like, wait, what do you mean? And he started to say, well, you know, but come on, you know, there's so like, you know, that basically the gist of what I understood him to be saying, right, in that line was something like, well, but wait, but, you know, you're not going to incentivize this, you know, whatever genius CEOs or whatever, you know, that they if they don't make all this money, that might be unfair. You know, that's what I got out of the line that he said right that. And so I started to say, well, come on, what do you think Jeff Bezos is actually doing? And then that was where he said, like, yeah, okay, he's or I think his actual response was
his hot wife doing cocaine.
Yeah, doing coke on a yacht and fucking his bombshell girlfriend. So it's like which is you know, I mean, again, if you're sort of seeing this as like a you know, framing as a you know, as a debate, right? You know, as Buckley Baldwin, right? You know, then that's like a, you know, a missed opportunity, because it got jokey at that point, and it's like, no, god damn it, you know, we need to go back and like hash this out, right? And in certain contexts, I actually think that'd be completely appropriate to do that at that point, right? Like reel it back and be like, no, but really, right? Let's talk about this. But again, I think strategically for this, I mean, I hope at least, you know, anybody who's persuadable who watches that, you know, who like sees that interaction, like, I mean, what do you actually get out of it, right? Like at the end of the day, right? I mean, like what sort of case has been made? Why, you know, for like what the value is of like Jeff Bezos, like having this like crazy amount of wealth. I mean, like, it's certainly nothing that was said after that about this party on the yacht, you know, makes it sound like it's urgent for society that Jeff Bezos have all that money.
And this is where, you know, I guess I've maybe shifted the conversation a little bit, maybe from Joe to you, Ben, but also maybe in the sense of like having figures on the left that are going into these spaces. And I agree, you know, Joe Rogan podcast, not a debate, but, you know, I guess it was like we could still discuss of like what is, if before you go on the show, hey, what are you going for? What is what are some of the aspects you want to get across? But and then after, and I would say even like with your books or whatever, hey, what type of accountability would a person on the left who's saying, I am the debater, I am I'm the left debate person, what type of accountability is there between people on the left and yourself? And to that, I guess too, is like, are there any critiques that you have taken into account as well, before, during, and after, that you said, hey, this person made a good point, maybe I should rethink that?
No, I fucking killed it. I was perfect. No, I'm sure there are legitimate critiques of, like I think it's impossible to have a conversation especially for 3 hours, right? And like not spend a lot of time afterwards like going over it in your head and be like, okay, should I said this? Would it have been better I'd said that, right? But I think, on the accountability question, I think it sort of goes with a little bit of what we were talking about earlier. It actually reminds me of something I was just reading this morning in the new print issue of Jacobin. There's a article by Natalie Scher called it's like the end of the AOC honeymoon or something like that. And in that article, her analysis, which I think is absolutely correct, is that it's like a very nuanced take on like AOC and the squad, but like, she basically says, look, have these people sort of, I don't know if she'd like the summary of her article or not. That's what I got out of it, right? Have these people drifted somewhat, in a direction that we don't like. Yeah. But that's a structural issue, right? Like since where's the left that is going to like exert any gravitational pull of its own? It doesn't exist. And so, the answer to your question, Marcus, where's the accountability? What's the account? Look, I would like to think that I'm playing a positive role and having and like bringing people around socialist ideas. And I do think anecdotally, at least, I have some evidence that some of this stuff has been effective, in doing that, right? From what people have told me, about their political evolution and role I've played in it. But also, like, look, I'm a podcaster. What accountability is there for podcasters? Other podcasters can yell at them, right? That's the accountability.
I guess
this is the thing.
I was just going to say, if it's okay, that then they'll throw back that they have that like there should be, right? There should be more accountability, but I think that the problem is, as our friend Adolf Reed has put it, right, that right now essentially there's not a left in America. Like there's more of one than was, for sure, right? But what are we really talking about for the most part, right? We have some elected officials, though certainly not connected to anything or even a party within a party, really. We have 6.7% private sector unionization, and those are not by and large led by socialists, with some exceptions. And so much of what we talk about the left, is basically journalists, academics, podcasters, and it's not connected to any kind of organized working class. So I think Adolf's line has been that, like, what we might have to be optimistic is something that in retrospect you can say, yeah, that was the left. All right, because it was like the beginning of a real left, as it was in the sense that it's existed historically and, and by historical and global standards. So I think ideally, look, we'd have a situation where people who are doing left media, which is basically what we're talking about, right? Whether it's like our shows where we mostly talk to each other, we mostly talk to people who are already, a leftist, which is not to say that it has no value. I think it has a lot of value for lots of reasons we could talk about, but we're mostly talking to a left audience. Or whether we're doing the kind of left media where you're wandering into other spaces and trying to talk to other people's audiences. I think one way or the other, ideally, the accountability would be that if, there's an actual like movement that's organically connected to, working class organization, that would, not that it would like make you cease to exist, right? You could still have your podcast, but like that would like, but like that there would be this sense of like, oh, I don't want to lose my connection, to this movement. And, you'd have accountability that would come out of that. Right now, I think it's structurally impossible for there to be accountability. I mean, all there is like, I can do my best, and the rest of you guys and other people who don't like me as much as you guys do, can make your critiques, and then maybe I'll listen to some of them if they make sense to me, and maybe I won't, and maybe I'll do something different next time. But I mean, like that's there's no real accountability there, because you're basically just talking about a bunch of individuals doing media stuff.
I gotta address this, because you made many points. The main point that you made that I want to address is that you said something that I totally agree with, and I usually we say on the show that there is no left, we just have leftists. We don't have a left, we have leftists. And second of all, when you were talking about the article that you were reading in Jacobin, in which the woman is basically analyzing that what exactly was the return on investment for the left with the election of AOC and these other Democratic socialists into Congress. And I'm glad you brought that up, and you basically articulated that in that article. She's demonstrating that unfortunately we didn't get much. They kind of pivoted to politics that were in some ways not pleasant, but that's because basically we don't have a left that's organizing anyone. Don't you think there's legitimacy in saying, well, maybe the fact that we believe that electoralism was the primary strategy instead of movement organizing building is the reason why we're stuck in a conundrum where we're all just not racial navel-gazing, but navel-gazing all of these congressmen and looking at them and saying, why don't you do, when none of us are organizing, when the strategy should have been organize, and
Build
when you build institutions, cadre, movements, it will naturally build a political constituency to get politicians, because, and the reason I bring this up, and this is very important, is that I vividly remember where certain of the hierarchy at Jacobin were patting them on the back for their belief that electoralism, that their promotion of electoralism as the strategy of gaining state power is what justified them being the vanguard of the left. And I thought that was absurd. What we're seeing now is that the fruits of that labor have that same publication. People were writing saying, well, that kind of didn't work out that way because we never had a movement. Well, people were saying there were people, even Adolph Reed was saying, and we had him on the show a couple of times. What did you expect to get out of your support for Bernie Sanders? One, I never believed Bernie Sanders was going to win. He said that on 3 different occasions. And number 2, at best, I would hope that a movement would have been developed.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, because I think that the
his run.
I think the play was that that there was like the gamble, right? I mean, I think with the Sanders, the Sanders gambit was that you could, like that you could kind of jumpstart it the other way around, right? That you could do electoral activity that would, that a movement would come out of, and I think that, I mean, I don't think that was wrong to try. I think it was, I think it was, especially in retrospect, always a long shot, because I mean, there's a reason that it tends to happen the other way around, right? But I also think that, and I want to be really careful about this, because one thing I absolutely hate when leftists do is when they lose and then do like a victory dance about whatever, whatever scraps they got out of, even though they lost. Right. It's like, oh, really? If you think about it, we won because, whatever, that there are, we won because there was, there are twice as many people at our last meeting. So there we go.
Exactly. We won. DSA has now got 70,000 members.
Let me say this.
So I don't want to do that. Right. I don't want to err on the side of doing that. Right. But they have at the same time, I think that it is true. Right. That with all of that, Even with the like huge contradictions, like having a tiny number of people in office who, if they're going to do anything, for the constituents, the political priorities, that's going to lead into a strategy that doesn't necessarily, comport with our preferences, that they have. That it is true though that we do. There is a lot more sort of awareness of at least the possibility of a political identity, the left of standard liberalism, and that has come out of it. But I think that the question, and obviously, I think Jacobin's perfect and has never been done anything wrong. But they have but I think the question is where we go from here. And I think further electoral efforts are definitely part of that. But I think that the question is also like, okay, look, if Bernie Sanders had been elected, like he'd actually made it to the presidency, we could argue about whether that would even have been possible, right? I certainly know what the case for no looks like. But like, if that had happened, do I think he would have been able to carry out most of his platform? Definitely not, right? Do I think that it would have dramatically altered the landscape on which we fight about stuff like that for the better? I think also yes, but also there's a reason why he was elected, right? There's a reason why he didn't win the Democratic primaries, and that's because the left is incredibly weak on the ground. It's actually a miracle that he got as far as he did, given that level of weakness. And so I think that what we need to focus on now, and I mean, I guess this is my roundabout way of agreeing with Pascal on the core point, is that think, okay, what is it that we can do that's going to create the conditions for some, for like a future Bernie Sanders to actually win, right? Like what is it that we could do? And there is a certain extent to which the grim truth is that like we can't just like will the political conditions to be different than they are, but to the extent we can impact it, right? How do we do it? And I think that and I think it's tricky because there's not going to be anything that's going to have the level of gravitational pull the presidential campaign has and like focusing everybody's energies in the same direction. But I do think, and this is the last thing I would say, that they have that like some of the, as small as they are relative to the scale of the problem, some of the labor organizing victories that have happened recently, I think maybe do point towards something that people can focus on that's concrete, that that they could see, that like it's not just like, trust me, we've got a 100-year plan here and this is going to lead to something, but that's like they can kind of see in the immediate, like even something like, I know this is not even the sort of main event as far as labor goes, it's relatively peripheral, but like just because it's so visible, even just being able to say, hey, 88 Starbucks, they're filing for unionization. Now it's 100. Now it's 103. That they have, like, I think that's really helpful because I think people can understand that as a tangible victory, and that's something that can actually pay some dividends in the very short term. And the more the working class is organized, and actually the point I made in that article I wrote for the Daily Beast of all places, neither party cares about the working class is the title. It's basically the point I made at the end. It's like, yeah, look, you're not going to get. I mean, how much political pull do you expect workers to have? Given the current level of organization, basically none. So it's not surprising that the sort of attempts to pander are this shallow. So yeah, I think that maybe a focus on workplace organization right now, I'm not saying is the only thing, but I think is like a very large thing, might be able to stop people from being just completely demoralized in the face of some of those electoral defeats, and might also help contribute to reversing the political situation down the line. That would
I would add this. Hold on, Pascal. I would add this, that I think there's so much focus on presidential elections, and there's so much focus on a handful of Congress people, because there was a moment where, in that Bernie moment, we have to remember that the AOC comes out of that 2016 campaign where a lot of people got hyper politicized. Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders hyper politicized a lot of people that were watching Jackass 15 times a day weeks before. And we have to kind of keep that in mind. And in that politicization, there's a lot of people that are just now, there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of people just now trying to look at things from a brand new perspective that is a left perspective. People don't really understand exactly what that looks like because there's a lot of American exceptionalism just built into the way people look at politics, even geopolitics. We also have to keep in mind that we live in a whole new economic paradigm when it comes to the way we consume media, and influencer culture is just a part of that. There's a lot of people in this world that don't want to talk about anything local because it doesn't get clicks. So, even trying to explain kind of the ineffectiveness of the squad per se, without someone calling you some sort of apologist, I would use something like the Los Angeles City Council, literally the most powerful city council in the country, right? There was a woman that ran on a very progressive ticket, a very progressive on housing ticket. But because she's one of two in the city council, she's constantly capitulating to center left, center right people on the council when it comes to funding police, homeless sweeps, and not much is getting done. When Operation Room Key got rolled out, which was the project that Gavin Newsom rolled out, which is like, look, we got all these hotels that are empty. We're gonna put the homeless in these hotels so they can quarantine during COVID. And then even more money got rolled out for it, and it's a small amount compared to what like law enforcement gets. But more money was rolled out to purchase these hotels. LA couldn't fill them. LA couldn't fill the 50,000 rooms wherever they had. They couldn't fill them. Hundreds of thousands of people on the street that can't fill the hotels. There's a huge problem, but there's also not a lot of organizations that are pushing politicians on these issues because people are pretty scattered. We can blame some of it on COVID and the lockdown. I blame some of it on the fact that as we're trying to get political, we're just so disconnected from working class movements like you guys are saying. And there's a lot to be said about spectacle. And I yelled about it, therefore I fixed the problem. What say you about that? I'll take my answer off there.
I want to.
Can I just say to what Jason was saying that I think, I think that's really important. I actually do want to talk if we did have a minute to do it about what we could kind of do about it to the extent that we can do anything about it, doing the kind of commentary that we do. But like also I think that part of the reason too, in addition to all those factors that you just gave, I don't know how big a factor this is, but it's just the economic collapse of traditional media, right? Because what does that mean? Like there used to be like even like very small cities, right, would have like they're like a local newspaper who had like a guy whose job was to cover the city council, in that city, and then like their article about it would be covered on like the local TV station that night, and whatever. And there's just no equivalent to that kind of infrastructure at all, which means that that people are maybe watching like there's still whatever 10 million old people or whatever who still watch cable news, but otherwise, there are like shreds of that infrastructure that still exists, but otherwise, especially if you're part of the increasing number of people who basically get your news from online, right? That's in some form or another, right? Then look, I don't know. I will freely admit, right? I don't really know anything about like politics in Atlanta. Right, because that's not like I spend all of my time thinking and talking, right? About national stuff, and like it could be, like I have, it's sort of irrelevant, right? Like where the apartment happens to be located, and I think a lot of people are like that. I think it's a huge problem if you think strategically that what you should do is you should reorient people around stuff like the LA City Council race. then I think there's a huge structural problem with doing that, like with even getting them to be like, aware of what's going on in the first place, never mind to invest their energies there, unless you're like kind of the, like the sort of local activist type, actually go to meetings and stuff. But like that's a very unusual type of person.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I want to address a couple of points that you made. First is that one of the reasons why I'm a little skeptical of using COVID as an excuse for, or not excuse, a rationale for why there's a lack of organizing, is because the right is organizing very effectively in the face of COVID. So all of the arguments in terms of why the logistical realities of the moment stop organizing, I don't buy any of them. The right is definitely organizing, and they're doing it very effectively, and they're using tactics that the left traditionally prided itself on. But in terms of the strikes that are going on, and there are debates as to whether or not strike activity is actually going up or down, because I'm sure you've seen some reports that it's actually not going up. Some of it is going down, and that union membership is not even up; it's actually down. There are various data points debating the veracity of that. But let's assume there is an increase in strike activity for the sake of this argument. That's happening in spite of the left, not because of the left. To be absolutely correct.
Yeah.
All right. So we can expect that.
Chris Smalls is my best. I love Chris Smalls for this reason. When I talked to him, and I talked to him before on air beforehand, because we got connected through a person that was doing a documentary about him. Got you. He was apolitical. It was the conditions in that warehouse that politicized him, that got him to organize, because he knew he needed to do better. Even if you look at Bessemer, Alabama, it wasn't a bunch of socialists that jumped up and were like, "Hey, let's get a union in here." It's always conditions that cause people to get politicized. I think Starbucks kind of is an interesting situation, because Starbucks doesn't mind as much as like Amazon does.
Amazon, yeah.
Although I will say, if you look at that first store in Seattle, considering the tiny number of people that we're talking about who worked there, they really did pull out like a lot of stops to try to stop that from happening. Transferred in managers from other stores to like pull people aside for illegal one-on-one conversations to like try to browbeat them into not doing it. Like, I think they knew it was going to be bad for them if it happened, not because it really matters that much if they like have to spend money at this particular store. I mean, that's like the one dot of the map from network, right? It's that I think they were worried about the power of the example, right? And
that goes on in Whole Foods as well.
Yeah.
Right. That's part of your training.
I want to, this is going to be my summation as to why this is happening. I believe that the mistake leftists, because as Jason knows and Marcus knows, I don't believe that we have a left. I believe we have leftists. The mistake that leftists we have today are making is that they are a replication of the mistake that was made with the new left of the 60s. In that, this is basically a movement of downwardly mobile, college-educated, adjacent, university pedigreed, faculty-affiliated people, or nonprofit organizationally affiliated, NGO-involved types who really have no actual experience, understanding, sympathy, or real interest, no matter how much they talk, of dealing with working class people where they are and organizing them to change their socio-political realities. And I think that is the core reason why these leftists that we have, and I include us in that categorization, are absolutely unable to organize any type of true movement. And it is an embarrassment that people like Steve Bannon, who can act like they care about working class people, are so profoundly better at it than people who talk 24/7 like we do about caring about the working class.
And if before we, I know you got to go soon, but There is one thing that I did kind of want to bring up with listening to the Joe Rogan show, and maybe this is like a broader thing of just like, where does any type of like specifically about violence and Andy know?
Yeah.
And so listening to the portion that you had like on Andy No and kind of saying like, hey, shouldn't get milkshaked, you discredit.
Well, the milkshake, I should say, is not the issue, right? I mean, like, if it had just been a milkshake that's thrown at him, I think you just roll your eyes, right? I mean, I think that I think it's the actually getting hit, like after that is the.
Well, and this is where, like, if this guy's been tied to, I don't know, did you mute?
We're fine. We can hear you.
We good? Oh, sorry. I thought I saw Ben still going, but maybe the video was just messed up. I mean, this guy's been straight up tied to like neo-Nazi groups. Like there's been just like documented evidence, messages, people's names sent, and stuff like that. And not everybody can be aware of everything going on, and that's kind of why I brought up earlier of like, how is there some type of accountability between like, we don't have a huge left organizing anything, but at the end of the day, there still are people doing the work on the ground, and I guess like, how do we, like the talking heads and camera, make sure that we're not discrediting some of the things that was happening, because in my opinion, I think like Andy No got everything he deserved. And the danger he posed to other people, like, is, he fucked around and found out.
Very emotionally satisfying thing to say. I don't think it really makes sense. I think
Ben, can you hear us? Ben, can you hear us? Ben, can you hear us?
Lost audio.
Yeah, we lost you. Oh.
Deep State.
Didn't Andy No dox some people, some Antifa people?
Yeah. So he'd given like names to like like anti-fascists. Like he like meets with neo-Nazi groups and everything like that. Like,
can you hear me now?
Oh, we can hear you. Somebody said it was Deep State Rogan.
Yeah. So before Deep State Rogan got me, I was going to say, so I'd really recommend. So, okay, well, two things. One, so like you could read it in my the Antifa, the Pathologist Powerlessness chapter in my book that we were talking about in the interview, where I go into a lot of these details about the doxing claims and stuff like that. I'd also really recommend an article that Nathan Robinson wrote at the time for Current Affairs called Discipline, Strategy, and Morality. But aside from like some of the weeds questions, I don't think that the people who beat up Andy No represent a sort of movement on the ground that we want to be like backing, repping, or not undermining. I think they represent the absolutely worst of LARPing middle class self-indulgence and the kind of thing that actively interferes with the possibility of a meaningful working class organization. I think that what I said about Andy No in the book, and again when the subject came up with Rogan, is I said I didn't like him. I said I think he's I don't think he's an honest journalist, and that I thoroughly disagree with his worldview. But I also think it's incredibly dangerous and stupid for anybody on the left to say it's fine to vigilantes to beat up writers if we've decided that they're a dangerous propagandist or not a real journalist. That's setting the kind of precedent that is not going to go well for us. I think to put it mildly. So I would very much. I think that's setting a precedent that's like frankly suicidal if you take seriously the idea that we could grow in importance and have any kind of influence in the world. It would only fail to be so if you think that we're never going to be important enough to bother repressing.
I mean, my position on violence is that use it when you receive it. Someone lays hands on you, you lay hands on them. If they don't lay hands on you, don't lay hands on them.
Before
I would strongly concur with that. I think that's exactly right. And I think that's the point that Nathan was making in that article: discipline, strategy, and morality from current affairs.
Ben, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Yeah.
I don't know if we were your first post Rogan interview.
Might be the first live one anyway. So I think it might be the first one that's out. I talked to Doug yesterday, but I don't know if he got
he
that.
Didn't put it up. Motherfucker, you're moving too slow, Doug.
Yeah. You snooze, you lose. All right. Well, yeah, thanks, guys. Really appreciate the conversation.
Good conversation. This was the of the 3 appearances you've made, I enjoyed this one the most. I enjoyed several of them.
Please check out Ben's channel. Give them an argument. Also check out his call-in show, because our TIR member, Deep State Kuba, is on there. I was just recently on there a couple weeks ago. And please check out Teray and I, and Ben put a clip up of us recently. I
heard a call-in is taking Android now.
Yeah, call-in is available on Android. So you can call in on either an iPhone or an Android. If you want to do listen only, you can do that in a browser. But yeah, conversation I had with Kuba about Ukraine was fantastic. It is kind of funny. We never talked about it, but we did allude to that at the beginning, that I've had. Even though I've said many times that I think that the invasion of Ukraine is a criminal act, and I have all solidarity for anti-war protesters in Russia. I have still been getting called a Putin apologist on Twitter all week. Because
really?
Yeah.
It's so frustrating.
It's so explaining the history of how we got here.
Yeah, exactly. Like just say.
I wonder who that sounds like.
The rights and wrongs of everything that's happened in Ukraine since 2014 aren't as simple as you would think from it's a much murkier and more ambiguous situation than you'd think from getting the reactions that people have been having this week. And I think that you can just like I think you can say that 9/11 did just happen because Al Qaeda hates freedom. I think you can explain the actions of different global actors without without endorsing them. And I also think that the op-ed that Bernie Sanders wrote for The Guardian, calling for sort of pulling out all the stops, peace negotiations, try to stop this from happening is exactly what should have happened. And it's insane that it's not. And I think that the people who are, Marcus was talking about that no-fly zone thing from 2016. There are like really crazy people now who are calling for Biden to do that in Ukraine, which could potentially start World War III. And my my hottest take, if I didn't piss off enough people with the no thing at the end, is that if we started World War III and ended the world, that'd be bad.
Wow! You would come on here and say that? Wow.
He is Ben Burgis. Ben, thank you very much. I know you got to go. And tell Kenzo I said what's up.
All right. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
And when you go on there, ask Kenzo what I just sent him.
Okay, we'll do. All right.
Peace.
See ya.
That was a fun conversation, man. I'm really glad Ben got a chance to go on Joe Rogan. I actually I do talk to Ben outside of just doing these shows, and I think people have a real misconception on who the actual man is. We were talking about this earlier today, Pascal, kind of who all of us are. But I'm glad he got a chance to go on there and challenge some of the
can I say
insane right-wing narratives.
Yeah, and which I agree. I'll say though, and with Ben or anyone else, when it says to say whooping somebody's ass who deserves it isn't a popular thing, I just disagree. I think it's hella popular.
I don't believe in laying hands unless hands have been laid on.
And that's the thing is I agree with that. But
I don't believe that you lay hands unless hands have been laid on. When someone lays hands on you, then no, you do what you have to do to defend yourself in proper proportion. But just man, punch a fascist in the face becomes drag a leftist behind your car real quick.
But but the thing is though is that if you can't just defend yourself outright because you're saying there's going to be some type of worse response at what
That's
what
not
point?
what I'm saying, Marcus.
This is what I'm saying. Andy knew is still living, breathing. He's fine, right? He caught some shit for the shit he was doing, and I don't see where that's a problem.
Okay, what did this guy do? Because I missed the Jake's gist. He doxed some people.
And this is where it's like, if Ben is saying, like, I mean, I don't know. He was saying, I got to read, some port of some other book. I don't know. But at the end of the day, this dude is not only just like a media for the right. He is organizing with these like neo-Nazi groups.
I get that. What I'm saying is that what was the thing that he did? He doxed some people.
Yeah, it was doxing and then like turning the Nazi group onto leftists.
Okay, and you think that because he did something which is completely legal, he doxed people?
I'm not going to decide my morality off of what's legal.
He doxed people and he gave their info to right wingers that you have a right to implement violence on him.
I'm saying I don't have a problem with what happened to Andy No. And I don't think to go on, I don't think having like arguing against what happened to that is somehow like going to be winning. I don't think saying I don't give a fuck what happened to this dude, he fucked around and found out, is somehow going to be less popular.
It's not stopping.
And I mean that's but
okay, listen. Let's be very specific here. There's a difference between what you do as a political tactic and strategy and what you do as an individual. There are people, I mean, Jason sent me a video of some guy getting his face smacked the fuck out of. I laughed. I was like,
oh man, it reminded me of Django.
My man got pow.
Let me say this again. I was okay with the first 15, but it was the last 32 that was unnecessary.
Dude smacked the crap out of that guy, and I was laughing. Okay.
Yeah.
Does that mean I would, under normal circumstances, advocate a guy just randomly smack another guy, regardless of the contentious nature of? No, I would not. I would not. If you want to scream on him, yell at him, fine. But smack. First of all, I am literally not going to advise people to break the law. In that context. In that context. There might be other contexts, depending, in a more revolutionary context. But in that context, I'm not going to advise someone to assault and batter another person.
And this is where,
all right.
I hope I'm not saying this. I hope I'm not saying the same, or I hope I already say it, but I guess what I want to make clear is that when hey, this dude did some fucked up shit and people did some fucked up shit back. When it comes to Ben, when it comes to anyone else on the left, trying to talk about things, I don't know how helpful it is to go onto a Rogan and say that, hey, these people who claim to be on the left are the worst, they're stupid. Now you're doing all these things. That's where, hey, just you at the very least, just fucking gloss right over that one and don't fucking bring it up. So that's, yeah.
There's a good conversation you guys should watch then. Chris Hedges wrote a whole counterpunch article about Antifa. Yeah. I want to say it was before Heather Heyer, or right around the time that poor woman got hit by the car, if you remember that, in Charlottesville. And he kind of takes the same point as Ben, is that when you act so violent, you don't really help your cause. You're not going to grow your cadre when you're constantly trying to be anti-violent, because this isn't the deacons of defense we're talking about here. This is. I
would say this.
Go ahead, Pastor.
That's a very good point, Jason. I'm glad you brought that up. Number one, Hedges is a pacifist. That's one that you need to know.
No, he's not.
When I read it, he was. He claimed he was. No. He's not now?
No, he never has been. He says he's not a pacifist.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
He said he's not a pacifist?
Said he's not a pacifist. After he wrote that article, he actually had someone from Antifa come on his show. And
I thought I'm almost sure I read places where he said he was a pacifist. Okay, he's not a pacifist. Okay, I stand corrected. Hedges is not a pacifist. Okay, fine. My position is that I disagree with what Antifa did in context of XYZ activity and condemning Antifa as the worst manifestation of the left. I disagree with that. In other words, I don't think that when I look at Antifa, is there anything valuable about their presence? I will say there is value to their presence in this regard. Fascists have a proximity to violence, and it is not unhelpful to have cadre in organizations that are trained and prepared to counteract fascist violence. In that regard, I can see the value of having Antifa and supporting Antifa in that regard. Initiating violence against fascists, I would not agree with that. So the question for me becomes, Chris Hedges, do you have a problem with an organization that is a left organization rooted in responding to fascist violence? Or do you have a problem with an organization called Antifa that initiates violence against fascist actors?
I mean, even Cornel West told him, I don't know if you guys ever saw that interview. They had a conversation, and Cornel West was like, if it wasn't for Antifa, more people would have gotten hurt in Charlottesville. So I think there's a time and a place for a certain level of protection when you're dealing with, large swaths of far right reactionary violence, because again, hyperpolitization isn't just people on Twitter, angry tweeting about what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. Hyperpolitization also goes to places like Orange County, which is a bit of a right-wing area, but it's also been historically a real middle-class area. It's where fucking Disneyland is. But that's where a lot of the violence you see in California, all these violent anti-mask protests, violent anti-immigration protests, a lot of that shit isn't coming from the border. It's coming from like 2 hours north of me in Orange County.
Right.
So there is an hyper politicization that is getting violent on the right. So I understand a role of having a counter to that, because we can't really look to law enforcement to step in and quell that violence. That being said, again, and I don't know the level of shit people got from Andy No, and I don't know. I definitely, my phone rang today from a stalker, and it was very uncomfortable. So I can only imagine what it's like getting, hate messages from people that are saying fucked up shit to you. But is fucking up Andy No, it's like hitting Richard Spencer to me. So
yeah, I mean, I think
this is the thing, goes like, I don't think anyone like, and I don't, like Ben's gone. Like, I guess like maybe like does Ben say the same thing about the person that punched Richard Spencer as,
I think he probably would.
I think he probably would.
Yeah, and like, in which case, like, okay, that's like, hey, I'm fine. Wait, if you say, hey, unless you're like immediate violence, that's the only time to respond. Some cases, I'm not necessarily in that same viewpoint. But yeah, I mean, like, I really, I don't see like, really, yeah, this is my point. I don't see a very good, like a good point, or, any type of leverage or anything gained from hammering down on the point that people, kicking Andy No's ass are like, the worst in the left, like the dumb left and all this type of shit. No, and especially when you're going to a Joe Rogan's audience, and professing that type of shit.
I think it's complicated, right? It's more complicated to me, in my opinion, because there is maybe you guys disagree. I do think there is an element of that is a little bit silly. Like when you're constantly looking for, not every a-hole is a fascist, right? Andy No isn't everywhere. He is not the most powerful man in media.
And
So,
but like in that same vein, the left that or any like the small group of individuals that put hands on Andy No are also they are a speck in the huge speck that is the left, right? In the disjointed leftists, even those people aren't like that's not some type of like overarching narrative that drives the left, you know. And that's what I'm saying is like I don't see like the point of just kind of like really going in on that group and saying this is super wrong.
There's someone in the chat who said it's emotional, and I think there's a lot of emotion that gets into that. And I think when you really believe that the thing about the whole, I don't want to speak for Ben, but I'll speak for myself. The thing that I see is it's the hammer and nail situation where if you are the hammer and everything you see is the nails, like everything is fascism. All I see is fascism right now, and I have to hammer it. Which, anything you say against me is fascism, so I have to hammer it. And I'm going to hammer some innocent people in that aren't fascist. They might be fascist adjacent. They might have some bad opinions, but now I have to hammer that nail.
That was the kind of vibe we had after Trump won in 2016.
Yes.
Everything was fascist.
Everything was fascist. Everybody was a racist, and living in and spending so much time kind of in these parts of America, and I'll even throw Canada in there as well, because I spent a lot of time in the central part of Canada as well. These red flyover states where Negroes just don't exist. Not everything is fascist. Not everything is super right-wing reactionary racist.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, even if it is, that doesn't mean you have the right to just beat motherfuckers down, beat them down. What I'm saying is that, like, listen, I think it would be more value to see someone intellectually humiliate Richard Spencer than punch him in the face.
Yes, I do. I think so.
But since that didn't happen,
I'm not going to encourage you to go punch him in the face.
Well, yeah, I think we're all. I think at least for the most part too, because it's not even just like I don't give a shit. I watched it. I still watch the video. Hell, I watched the Richard Spencer getting punched. Not this last week. Laughed. It's great. That's kind of my point, though. It's like, and people could say, "Hey, Marcus, that's not how you're going to win some people over, right? People are going to see you laughing at some dude punching this white man, and that's not going to be win people over." And then it's like, oh well, I don't give a fuck, Like maybe somebody else can reach him. I just don't see the point, I guess, of saying, hey, this one group and this whole nation of a disjointed left is like, like needs to get beat up on, when it's just like, yeah, it's just like, hey, shrug, fucked around and found out, and like, whatever.
I don't think it would have been wise to be like, hey, he fuck. I mean, I think it would have been, I think my response would have been like, I understand why they did that. I wouldn't encourage it. I wouldn't advise it, but I think that they felt that they were protecting people's interests. I mean, I don't think it's not something that I would have encouraged being done. I wouldn't be like, oh, they're the worst, the most, maggot-filled level of what a leftist is. I don't think I would have gone there either.
Jason, say it. Don't hide behind this private chat.
I told Marcus, did I tell you this, Pascal? Did I tell you this last night? No. I found this channel called Street Beefs.
Sounds like a break. I
was watching people get knocked out all night. I found myself critiquing all night people's stance and shit, because maybe I haven't told you guys, there was a short time I taught boxing. You
taught boxing one time?
Yeah.
Did you do youth boxing? Did you do boxing?
It was kind of an emergency situation in a fighting gym I was working at, but yeah. No, I know properly how to. I choose not to do it, right?
Did you ever do extracurricular boxing as a youth?
No. I did boxing as a youth like we all did. Your mama got a big ass head. Your mama, Jason, your mama is a hoe.
And, and like, I guess too, like that may be the point though, is that if this is all just like a variation of schoolyard beef, you know, dressed up with swastika versus hammer and sickle, you know, is it worth like going hard and denouncing, you know, is it worth really talking about in any serious thing? Or is it just, you know, a fucking street fight? And, you know, instead of, hey, you're wearing a Patriots jersey and I'm wearing a Bengals, you know, like it does, like it's just something else.
Marcus, I think you're conflating a few things here. I was like, yo, listen, obviously there's an ideological problem people are going to have with people who are overtly, clearly, and absolutely saying, yes, they are fascist, racial supremacists. Okay, fine. Those people should be challenged primarily on the merits of their arguments completely. And if they engage in physical harm, they should be physically challenged. What I'm saying is that just going around and saying, yo, we're just going to beat down right-wing fascists, like off the cuff. Number one, we live in a right-wing country. They're not going to side with us. And number two, it doesn't make any sense if you can effectively defeat them on the argument that they present on the merits before you have to go there anyway.
And I know this is like, I agree with that. But like in some of these instances, you know, like I you know, like, and I think you already, you know, said that you agree with it. Like when you're going out into Joe Rogan, when you're going out into all these things, you don't have to play it up as if there's a strong left, or, you know, like, but, you know, I get it. Like, hey, don't encourage people to go out and do that. But at the end of the day, there were actions by Andy No, there were actions by Rich, you know, like there were actions that were responded to. And we could say, hey, you know, physicality, blah, 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 whatever the hell. But I think it's different when you're going out and you're saying, if you, you know, like we already talked like that, like, there's no accountability for any of the left spokesmen for the left. There's no accountability there. So people could say whatever the fuck they want. You know, we could have any opinion we want of the left in the United States, and there's no left to tell us, no, we're incorrect on our information, you know, or any of these things. And that's all I was, you know, like, I guess to the point of it is, if you're going to be the spokesman, if you're going to be the master debater on the left, maybe don't focus on that part so much, you know. I don't know.
Well, the point I didn't get to, I wanted to get to, was that, you know, since we are saying that there are no fiduciary connections to people, who exactly delegates that Ben should be the spokesman, the debater? What if there are people who are saying that I don't particularly like the way he does this? Like, what happens then?
That's fine. I think he'd say that's fine. And I don't think Ben is not a pacifist. I've been out. Ben is not a pacifist by any stretch of the imagination. I think people see that fucking sport coat with the shit on the elbows and think he's a bitch, but he is not. He's not.
Ben get down. He throw.
Well, you know what Ben
is not. I don't know.
Has hands. You know what Ben Dixon has.
Is he gonna? Are you saying Ben Burgis can throw down?
He's just not. I think people think, oh, you know, this guy, he doesn't want. Look at that fucking curly hair. He's white boy, the glasses, the books. Probably drinks scotch with his pinky out. Like, yeah, all those things.
Well, you go. Where have you seen Ben Burgis show hands?
No. He's just not scary. He's not scary. I'll let you know we were out. He's not scary.
I never said the guy's a coward. There's a difference between not being a coward and being able to throw hands.
Yeah.
Look, granted, he might have got fucked up, but he's just not scary.
Okay, so you're telling me he's not a coward. I never thought he was a coward.
No, he's not a scout. He's not a coward at all. I'm not saying he's walking around looking for that smoke. Like, who wants it? I'm just saying.
Yeah, you making it sound like this guy is Debo out here who wants to come through grip.
He's just not.
Like, come on,
he's just
for
not
real?
Scary. He is not the scary dude I think people would think he is.
Okay. Ben Burgis is not a coward. Okay, I have no problem believing that. Okay, that's great. But also, Ben
don't
Burgis
try to play it down. Like, I mean, Patrick Swayze.
Ben Burgis is not like Bruce Lee either.
Can you guys please stop making me laugh so fucking? I'm laughed so hard I farted twice, so I had to hit the mute button.
Yeah, I'm not shocked that Ben Burgis is not a coward. I would never say, you don't know the cat's coward. I wouldn't say I call him that, but I'm saying is that you're making it sound like my man is like Mr. T in Rocky 3.
We were looking for his brother. And he was like, where my brother at? And he was like, I was like, whoa, it was like, I won't get into it, but yeah. He is not, he's not a, I don't know, there's nothing I'm going to say that's right. I don't think he would be afraid if Andy No stepped to him.
Yeah. And actually, like, and I think even too, it's like when Ben is talking about, or like we all talk about, like, hey, the like practical applications, the good applications of Antifa organizing within the United States within the past few years. Like I think like if you're actually making an argument for the left, you just transition to that, and I don't know. I don't know if it is just like, oh, hey, we need to be apologists for anything on the left that happens ever. But at the end of the day, anything that happens on the left negatively is overstated. There's just no way that anyone on the left has a way to actually affect, change right now, whether it be some type of violent fucking, the most rabid Antifers out there. Like, there's just not enough. There's just not enough to like get past beating up one dude, And so like, I just don't know that there's like a seriousness and like, oh, this is the worst thing ever. It's barely anything.
I mean, look, I will say, as I was moving down here, the day I moved down here, there was a huge protest in SoCal, in Orange County, basically, and it got a little violent, and there isn't a big pushback to that violence, and it's a lot of far right violence, and they're looking to fuck certain people up.
Yeah, I mean,
they're not looking to fuck up Marcus and Pascal. Nah.
If you want to find out if I have hands, we can take them. I got hands, feet, machetes.
Whatever you want. 31 flavors of this motherfucker.
Oh shit.
But I mean, I just don't think it's a good look, man. Just like I think defensively, come on, for real. Like I get that, but just don't be going like, fascist power.
And that's where too. It's like, this is where I think like, there's a lot of people who, and this is like we like say for left flank for like the whatever we got. There's people who a lot of times will send us like, hey, there's this fucking like right-wing dude that lives here. We found out he works here and all that type of stuff. Share, spread the word. And it's like I don't like I don't think people need to fuck with that, right? Like that need like whatever happens on the ground needs to happen on the ground. And I guess, yeah, to the point, right? And like, it's just chat, stop making Jason laugh. He's attracting me now. All right. Now you fucking with my shit. No, I think really at the end of the fucking day, what does the argument, or at least what does hitting on that one point so hard do to actually help? Because I don't know that. Yeah.
This is the thing, and this goes back to the point in terms of who's going to be the one that we choose to have these debates, right?
Yeah.
Because they're going to be, people have tendencies, ideological tendencies. I can tell you right now, there's certain people who are sectarian in their thoughts who I would not want to be the one talking for the left at all.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be the ones that be like, oh, the Soviets and Stalin and the nation state doesn't. No, I don't want to hear that bullshit when you're talking for the left.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you should be like, and Stalin is the greatest either. But we have tendencies on the left who are more interested in discrediting aspects of left politics, thought, ideology, activity than discrediting the right.
Yes.
I'm not here for that.
Yes.
I mean, I think we have a right to challenge and critique what the left gets wrong strategically. And I think that's what we try to do on this show.
Yep. I agree 100%.
But to be out here talking about like, oh, these people they were horrible. Oh. Like, I find it rather interesting that we have people who are left thought leaders who feel like people who are considered very important to left ideological development are worthy of a takedown, i.e. Lenin, i.e. Marx, i.e., really, that's your project, to take down Lenin?
I don't know if they heard. He's dead.
So your project is, okay, so your project is to take down Chomsky? Really?
Motherfuckers need to leave Chomsky alone. Don't invite him on no more shows.
Chomsky alone.
Just leave him alone. Just leave him, let this motherfucker rest.
He's 1,000 years old and he's still on these shows. And I've never heard Chomsky be like, because I'm like, at this point, he should be like,
It's amazing. Really.
I want to say something, and I'll be very, very honest here, okay? I'll be very, it's controversial, whatever. The left in the West, and particularly in America, is in this contemporary moment, I would say really since the rise of the New Left, but really post-New Left, because that wasn't always the case. In this current iteration of the left, we have large numbers of people who have come to left politics through certain sectarian movements and ideas that are not rooted in radical revolutionary challenge to the effectiveness of effective function of capital, the state, or state power. I'm not saying that's bad or good, but the reality is that's the reality. I'm not, because we don't do sectarian leftism, I'm not going to talk about what those tendencies are. But one of the consequences of having those tendencies being the more larger number in popular is that the tendencies that are about revolutionary socialism or revolutionary communism get talked about as some kind of anomaly. Oh, there are too many of these people here. They're crazy. I wish you could say that in places that were actually catching heat from imperialists or colonial forces in the 60s and early 70s. You wouldn't be able to do that. Now, I will also agree that part of the reason we have this problem is that we have a leftist youth fetish phenomenon. But
you mean like Marjorie Stone Douglas, those kids with the guns, the anti-gun?
I'm not familiar.
Florida, the shootout by you, when the guy shot up the school and then the kids, everybody was like, these kids are the
March
future
for
of the left.
Lives. Right.
Yeah.
When I was saying that, but the thing is, though, leftist youth fetish is not a new phenomenon. There was a leftist youth fetish in the 60s, too. We do have a leftist youth fetish phenomenon in that we have a lot of young people who, because they are young, they are rebellious and they want to rebel, and they will glom on to statements, ideas, ideologies that just seem chic, rebellious, hot. I'm a Marxist-Leninist. I'm a Trump. I'm this. I'm that. Because it's hot, it's cool, it's chic, and they think it's radical. My position is that take people where they are. That's where they are. Fine. Understand that they are youth. But I am not going to discredit a tendency that I know is serious simply because it is leftist youth fetish that drives its popularity. Because the people who trained me in my politics were not doing it because it was a youth fetish. They were doing it because the state or the government might kill them if they didn't defend themselves.
Well, you took the fun out of this conversation, didn't you?
No, and that's the thing is that's the real shit, and that's it. And when I even bring it up, saying don't just go out and start shit, if anything, that ain't the fucking point. Also, that there's been real situations where people had to walk around with some real heat just to get around every day. You know, that's some real shit too. What is, and like, are these people, are like a lot of Antifa people right now on the left, are they doing that, or are they just trying to jump into that skin? I think that's a very, very worthy fucking conversation to have. You know, and I think we've got good examples of both, right? Of Antifa going out in the public and protecting people, and then, you know, even if it's just, hey, some dude punched punched Richard fucking Spencer while Richard's, you know, while he's just doing an interview, they say, hey, that's wrong. You know, like, you shouldn't, you know, punch the Nazi while he's doing the interview. Like, and which, like, yeah, okay. But at the end of the day, too, is like,
Well,
as the left people media sphere, how do we talk about these things? What, you know, and like, and all that type of shit.
let me ask you this. I want to raise you this as we're having this very fun conversation, and I'm trying to avoid doing all the editing work I have to do when I turn this computer off. I'm honest. Fuck it. I'm 2 bathtubs of coffee in. I just went off the air to pee. I'm good to go.
Wide awake.
Hey, watching. I'm getting ready to do this piece I'm writing with. I won't say with who, but I'm writing this piece, and I'm looking at talk shows of the 80s and 90s, and in the mid to late 80s through the kind of the early 90s. You would think that there was a huge rise in fascism. They never said fascism. The word, if anything, was like white supremacist. If anything, you heard. You remember this era, Pascal.
Absolutely.
Like every week, a different talk show host had a white supremacist on their show. And I can honestly say I saw more quote unquote white supremacist violence to the point that in 1995, I believe, the cover of Time magazine was Portland, Oregon, the crunchiest place in America, saying that this is the capital, maybe it was 93, of white supremacist violence. And it was a cover, it was neo-Nazis are all coming from the Northwest. This is what the media posture was back then because it got views. Is that another thing we're seeing right now, is kind of hyping this up? Is it a combination of, again, the hyper politicization of people in the Trump years mixed with? I
think one thing we got to remember why it happened in the 90s, right? We had Waco, Texas. We had the Ruby Ridge. There were a lot of, and I think where your point.
And that's a multiracial coalition in Waco.
Yeah, and this is where your point. I was just about to get there. So where your point is very valid, right? There were a lot of, I don't even want to call it abhorrent, very, let me choose a better word, obscurantist, radical activity that I don't necessarily know that we could characterize or right or left, but they were obscurantists. In other words, they were just so out of the scene, like Waco, Ruby Ridge, all that stuff, that were put in right-wing kind of crazy behavior. There was some that was right-wing. Like, what was the name of the guy, the white guy, during the 90s, during the Clinton years? Was it David Duke? The terrorist, the guy who did like some...
Oh, Timothy McVeigh.
Timothy McVeigh, yeah. There were some that had right-wing. And I think that the phenomenon you're talking about in the media was the reaction to an increase. Now, indulge me, let me make a little point here, if you don't mind. It's going to be hard for a lot of our younger viewers to realize this, right? There was a lot of ideological and political blowback that came about from the election of Bill Clinton from the right.
Yes.
People don't understand it. Let me give you some context. Number one, Bill Clinton was the first baby boomer president in the United States. That means every president before Bill Clinton was old enough to have fought in World War II. Okay? Bill Clinton, and by the way, I hate Clinton, so don't think I'm saying this to defend him. Bill Clinton becomes the first Democrat to come into power after 3 No, you have 76 election, 80, 84, and 88. 4 consecutive successful Republican. No, it was 80, 84, and 80. 3 consecutive successful Republican victories. In 84, Reagan wins every state in the United States except Minnesota, which is the state from which Mondale, his opponent, comes from.
Mm-hmm.
88, Bush the father knocks out Dukakis. The Democrats were demoralized, which is a lot of the rationale behind the pivot to the DLC, trilateralism, third way. Also, don't forget, the Soviet Union is collapsing. So the right thought that they had basically a political monopoly on American governance. This is a very important fact, folks, who don't remember this history. Bill Clinton never won the majority of the popular vote in his life. The only reason why he won in 92 and 96 is because Ross Perot ran as a third-party candidate and he garnered over 10 to 15% of the vote in both times. That's the only reason why Clinton won in 92. So Clinton, being not only a Democrat, but also being a baby boomer after all of those post-civil rights presidents that had lived through World War II, was, in the eyes of the American conservative establishment, a hippie, lefty. Do you remember how big of a deal it was that Clinton said, "I did not inhale"?
Yeah, because he smoked weed. Because he went to college during the drug years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yet we had a president named Barack Obama who admitted he snorted cocaine.
Well, his predecessor as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and again, I'm not defending Clinton. I'm putting things in proper context. So don't forget, Bill Clinton is the rise of the reign in popularity of Rush Limbaugh. No one knew who Rush Limbaugh was on a national level before Bill Clinton. Right-wing media is born because of Bill Clinton.
Well, they had a counter narrative finally, right?
Yeah.
You know, the counter narrative is that, you know, this guy is he's the evil leftist that's coming in. He's a hippie. He's a communist.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that part of, I believe, the phenomenon, Jason, you're talking about is that the reactionary right went into hyperdrive. The contract with America, with Newt Gingrich. People talked about Newt Gingrich and the contract with America in 94 and 96 the way people talk about Trump today. Part of the reason why Clinton was able to garner so much support in the Black community is that Black folk were terrified of the Congress under Newt Gingrich.
The 16th year of possibly another far right regime. No, that's actually an interesting take when you think about that time frame. But does it precede that a bit though? Because again, we're seeing this rise of right-wing violence towards the latter 80s.
There was a great article that I emailed to you. You probably haven't had a chance to read it yet. It was in Al Jazeera. I talked about it. You sent me an email and responded to it. The woman is an academic. She wrote an article tracing the racial history of right-wing philanthropy throughout American political history. And she talks about how the rise of the reactionary right even goes before Goldwater. It goes back to McCarthy. It goes back to the way in which anti-communism and anti-integration and anti-civil rights were merged in the 50s by the reactionary right, and how they financed people like William F. Buckley. And a lot of people don't, there's so much context that's lost here. William F. Buckley, up until the rise of Ronald Reagan, was the most important and maybe possibly powerful conservative in America.
Easy.
People don't understand that William F. Buckley can be argued to be the one who created modern conservatism.
Well, we're going to have this discussion with Professor Andrew Hartman next month.
We definitely should.
We will. I got to schedule it because, again, I'm just procrastinating at this point.
You know, there's a lot of political context to American development, theoretical, ideological, and political development, that in this moment of where everyone's a fascist or everyone's a Marxist Leninist, trot left, sock them, politics is really lost.
I like to call it neo-Marxist or cultural Marxist.
I hate that cultural Marxist nonsense. It's so ridiculous.
It's all ridiculous.
And I think like this, and it is like some of the Pascal said on another show of like just putting it in context of what's done on this podcast of like at best we're going for infotainment, like there's no, and like that one frustrating thing is that there's like some type of like there's a non-insignificant amount of people who think that someone that they're watching on the screen is leading the revolution, is organizing the party that's going to take over. And yeah, and that shit I think drives to a lot of the sectarian fucking bullshit. Oh, I'm this. I can only watch people if they've got this emoji in their bio. All types of just wild shit. But at the end of the day, it's like, and like maybe we get caught up in it a little too much. It's like maybe focusing and trying to focus on any and all real good left work. Starbucks, labor organizing. We could say, hey, this is just good, right? Like the fact that and like when you talk about too of like that section of labor, and what mass organizing means for service industry in general, like these are the things that like, yeah, at the end of the day, like maybe we don't talk about them enough, maybe we don't focus on building out those things enough. But yeah, and I don't know.
What's interesting to me is that I think what we're seeing right now, especially in these online spaces, is that people want to differentiate themselves from being influencers. I think that cats are finally understanding, like, no, this is what you are. So no, I'm not. I'm an activist. Well, what makes you an activist? Spectacle. I yelled at it. Therefore, I fixed it.
I will only use 3 terms to describe myself in terms of what I do. I'm a writer, political commentator, and I'm on a podcast.
Oh, I can tell you way more things. Bad motherfucker, sharp dresser, conscious eater.
Conscious eater. I don't oversell, Someone called me, you are a polemicist. You said that's great, right? I said that's great political writing. I guess I'm a polemicist. Okay, no problem. I was taught by the best of polemicists, Glenn Ford and Bruce Dixon.
But if they're not putting bad motherfucker in there, then really, what is it about? I really hope people say that Jason Miles, that's a bad motherfucker. Like that,
Jason Miles is a bad motherfucker. Jason Miles, bad motherfucker, good human being. Good human being. Good human being.
Dad. That's all I want to be known as, Dad. He is a dad. Why Jason's description of Pascal got me sounding like Shaft the Second.
By the way, Andy William. I finished that book, Red and Black in Haiti. That was a great read, man. I need to write an article on that book. It talks about the political history of Haiti after the U.S. coup up into the rise of Papa Doc. That's a great book, man. I didn't know the brother Andy. I just found out Andy William is Haitian, man. I didn't know that. We got a couple of Haitians.
Oh, no shit. Andy William and Kodak Black.
Andy William and Kodak. Let me tell you. I would tell you how I found out Kodak Black was Haitian. I didn't even know who. I'm in Florida. I didn't know who Kodak Black was.
Is he from Florida?
He's from Florida. Check it out. I'm talking to Torre on Facebook, and we're talking about hip hop, and he was like, and shit's getting bad. He said, look at this motherfucker. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? It's Kodak Black, right? I'm like, what's it, Kodak? He's like, yeah, this kid's Kodak Black. And I put up a post on, I think Torre was literally inciting me to post it because he knew what he was going to tell me. So I was like, what the hell is this guy And why is he like, the future of hip hop? And then Torre, by the way, says, yeah, he's one of your people, right? I said, what do you mean my people? From Queens? Like, I was like, he's Haitian. I was like, man, get out of here. What you talking about? This doesn't Haitian.
Immediately delete the post. I'll never stop. I'll never can't talk shit about another Haitian.
I go on Google. I looked at Kodak Black, and I was like, yo, Kodak Black is Haitian. Whoa! Wow. Now I know. Now, in South Florida, it's kind of blasphemous to like take down Kodak Black. I was not a fan. The whole aesthetics was not my thing.
I'm waiting for this group just to like bust into Pascal's room. Like, what the fuck did you say?
You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to down the brother, but I mean, listen, man. There was a Haitian rapper, what was his name? Black Dada. I really like Black Dada. He had this song, I'm a Zoe. It was very like Haitian, pro-Haitian kind of vibe. I was like, this is cool. I was like, can we have more Black Dada and less like Kodak Black? I mean, like, yo, what's up? I was like,
sorry about that.
Yeah.
It's just the way it works out sometimes.
I was like, yo, Kodak Black, son.
It's the sad state of musical affairs. I don't really listen to too much hip hop.
I'll tell you, this is another funny note. I was having a conversation. When you start to become an old man, when you hear Haitian music in rap songs, and you're like, did they say what I just thought they said? And you got to ask your brother, like, why is this happening? He was like, yo, this happened. Yo, there's a rap song called "Give Me the Jouet." Right now, jouet is a Creole word, and I don't know if you all see it. You want the jouet? I like the jouet. Yeah, give me the jouet. Come on, give me the jouet. And I'm like, is he saying? And I'm asking my brother. I was like, is he saying like jouet, the Creole word jouet? He's like, yeah, jouet is the Creole word for game or play. Like Bamuti jouet, like, give me a little game, right? So I was like, why is this guy singing about give me a little game? He was like, jouet now means to hustle. It means the trap game, the drug game. I was like, yo, these cats have taken Haitian Creole and turned it into some like drug joint. I was like, hold on. He's like, when you say give me the jouet, he means like, yeah, he's talking about doing like a hustle. He's doing like some dirty business.
What was that video I sent you? Did you look at that video I sent you where the young person was talking about AVE?
Yeah,
AAVE.
Vernacular English.
Marcus, do you know what AAVE is?
Reaction when she said, she was like, gross. Yo, middle class bougie Haitians will hear that jouet is not criminal activity, or like,
Oh shit.
Well, yeah, and no, I know like shit and like
y'all got me on the road. Let me tell you something right now. Shout out to someone made time ago. Yo, y'all don't know this, but I'm gonna spill some tea. Paul McComb has an article. This is cool. He's gonna love this. The title of the article is "My Nigga Haitians."
Oh, okay.
Paul McComb has a whole journal article arguing that there is a category of Haitians who are born after the rise of Aristide in America, who have appropriated Black American urban underclass behavior with Haitian flair, and that they basically don't have a true understanding of Haitian culture, of Haitian history, but they basically are very bling bling. They're very pro-capitalist, and they have very regressive, horrible hate politics about what's going on in Haiti. They support some of the worst regimes like Martelly, and they're all big fans of Wycliffe. And he literally calls them the My Nigga Haitians.
It's the Wycliffe thing that kind of fucks me up.
Oh my god. Well, I was gonna say when we were talking about some type of good hip hop, I did get to interview me and Karthik, Djene And she's out of Toronto. Or excuse me, they're out of Toronto. And yeah, they came out with an album. It's quick. It's just 5 tracks, like really quick EP, but a very, very dope track on it. It's called The Green Line. And it's basically, I don't know, very working class song. It's just talking about riding home from work on the train. And I don't know, it's very, very relatable. But
it's a working class struggle.
Yeah. I mean, it's like not this like, oh, proletariat, you know what I mean? It's like really like it just takes you on the fucking train ride home while your feet hurt, and you know that all these politicians don't give a shit, you know, but there's really nothing you can do about it right now, you know, like it's a very fucking real song. But yeah, Djene, the album is actually called 2022, so makes it easy.
I feel a sense of fulfillment now explaining the my nigga Haitian phenomenon to the brothers on this show. Right? Yeah.
Off air, I have to tell you about. I swore I sent you this video, Marcus, but it made Teray so mad. He like messaged me the next day and he was like, "You got me mad looking at this shit." that person talking about the AAVE. African.
He already sent me a video that like traumatized him. He's like, "Is this what I think it is, or am I an old man?" I was like, "Nah, that's what you think it is." He's like, why is this person doing this? I said, "For all the reasons you just sent me. That's why they're doing this." He said, "And they do this on Instagram." I think Tori just got Instagram. He's like, "And they do this on Instagram." I said, "Tori, how long have I been telling you that Instagram is traumatizing?"
And that was from a public television channel in the Bay Area. That was public TV. That was PBS.
Wait. And they're talking about AAVE?
AAVE.
Oh,
no. It was the most woke thing I've ever seen.
Was it white people?
I was nodding off. And
was it white people doing the talking too?
I mean, my whole thing is that there are, I mean, we can't act like there aren't. Are there slang or urban, are there derivatives of African American vernacular English? I would say, yeah, but I think there are multiples. Like cats in Philly, for those who don't know, they have terminology they use. They say John.
Yeah.
That's my John. Look at that John. That John is hot. Yeah. That John is bad. That's a bad John. That's a
Baltimore motherfuckers sound half English, like from the UK. Like it's like, you know, some of the shit they sound fucking from fucking jolly old England. It doesn't make any sense. But like, yeah,
John is like a term that they use to describe anything. That's my John. Look at that John over there. That's a Philly thing. In New York, everyone guys in New York say, son, what's going on, son? Son, what's happening, son? That's a very New York thing. Son. I think DC back in the day was Shorty. They were all called the ladies. What's going on, Shorty? What's happening, Shorty? How you doing, Shorty? That was a very DC thing. You know what I'm saying? So my position is that, are there African American vernacular Englishes? I said, yeah, but there are multiple ones. There's not just one African American vernacular English.
It was
like saying hella. That's a Bay Area thing. It's hella hot out here.
Yeah.
Yep. All day. Twice on Sunday. Hella. We hella raw.
She's about to get up. Hella. Let me holler at you. Hella.
Oh, hella raw. No. Creole is now part of the offering on Babbel.
Oh, no. Oh, wow. I am trying to learn Spanish on Babbel, and I've been lagging on my Spanish on Babbel, and I'm really upsetting the few people that I do interact with here in Mexico with the very small amount of Spanish that I know. But I was able to order coffee and flautas, so I'm getting better.
Well, yeah, man.
Marcus, I will see you Monday.
Yeah.
Pascal?
Yes.
You're going to go have a celery stalk and drink some water?
I'm probably going to have some oatmeal for lunch. I had fruit for breakfast.
God damn.
Yeah, it's going to be a whole new Pascal. You're going to have to get him new clothes.
Probably that's the goal. And hopefully smaller, not bigger.
Well, that would be fucked up on our part. To get his ass some bigger jeans.
I bought you a tent. No.
Thank you again, Ben Burgis, who's still actually hosting this show on his channel. Appreciate you. I will probably do later.
Oh man, I hope. I mean, we were on Ben's show the whole time when I was talking
The
shit.
whole time.
Damn.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yo,
What's up?
another phenomenon. Y'all got me going in. Yo, I'd like someone to explain. You listen. Listen. I need someone to explain to this. Why are there random white women on TikTok and Instagram dancing like black people, exposing their large behinds as if they're trying to entice particularly black men, while flaunting the fact that they're married to white guys? Like, why are you doing that?
We are not racially profiling on this show, or are we sexist?
I'm just saying, what I'm saying is I don't understand. I don't mind them doing the videos and the dancing, but I'm saying, why are you doing that? And then you were like, and this is my husband. And by the way, the dances is always to like hip hop, like black music. I'm like, y'all ain't doing the cha cha cha.
I don't know if you know this, but a lot of white guys like big asses.
But why not dance to country music? A lot of white guys like country music.
Well, they can like hip hop and big asses and the same shit you like.
I'm just saying.
I like heavy metal. I like big asses.
I'm just saying, it's like there's a whole. I'm like, why is this happening? There's weird stuff that happens on TikTok and Instagram, man.
You need to stop watching TikTok. It's not gonna be good for you.
It's very, very disturbing.
Yeah, no more TikTok.
What's,
you watching
like,
TikTok is not good.
And it's just like, and actually too, it's like I think this is like a whole other conversation that actually like might be good to bring Ben back about like platforms, you know, and different media spaces and shit like that.
Watch.
Yeah. Well, like that's the thing is like, what is good to use? What are, you know, like what is good for you, right? And like at that point, you know, because like I agree, you know, they make them, you know, like there's an algorithm for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's to keep you there.
Yeah.
So like
no more TikTok. I gotta like take it away. Like, oh, like, you know, dad's like, oh, you watching that TikTok again?
Someone keeps telling me that we should do TikTok videos.
I don't listen to them. Marcus, do you do TikTok videos?
No. Erica does her own TikTok videos.
Mm-hmm.
And then
does
like
she
sometimes
dance to hip hop music?
No, it's mostly like, hey, like, you know, this bad thing happened, and like then points to like all the fucking times that the United States has done it, you know, and it's like,
gotcha.
Like that's like the type of like TikToks that I've seen that people are like, oh shit. Or it's like, I mean, there's one dude who he does these little skits of like how the CIA has gone and done coups and whatever the fuck, but he's holding Nerf guns and like there's, you know, like the blood, like you can see a ketchup bottle next to him. So, you know, he does like narrative things and it's like people, but it's like he's giving the facts, you know, the little things. It's like
more than just the dances.
There was a Haitian sister, I believe she's an academic. She does Haitian history on TikTok. It's pretty good. It's not bad.
Well,
I mean, I guess you can use those forums. I mean, I'm sure when people created YouTube, they didn't think people would be doing stuff like this.
There's a lot that I have to do, and that I can't add another thing to it. So if you want to get on your cell phone and shake your ass.
No, I mean, take clips of our show and put it on TikTok.
You can clip it and put your ass next to the clip. Go for it.
That's gonna be my TikTok. I'm just gonna be shaking my ass while Pascal yells. It's gonna be dope.
Pascal, it's just Marcus shaking his ass to Pascal talking about the 50-year counter revolution.
We got something.
We got TikTok. You want a TikTok? Oh shit! Thank you guys so much. We'll be back Monday with Beyond the Red Zone. Marcus and Mac will be talking sports and the left. And then Tuesday, this is Revolution, we'll have on professor and economist Rob Larson, and we'll be talking about Milton Friedman. I always want to call him Marfred. Milton Friedman.
Marfred Friedman. Oh, I got to read that. Oh, that's my homework for the rest of the day. I got to read Larson's book.
And Capitalism versus Freedom. And did Milton Friedman start neoliberalism? And I have to finish this bathtub of coffee I have in front of me. You guys have a very good rest of your day, afternoon, or evening, and we are out.